gonna get a little bit crazy. Wild and maybe even vulgar, if you please. It's after dark and we're gonna light it up. We got some fun in store for you, no tease. It's time for Midnight Edge after dark. A little naughty, will hopefully make you chuckle. But we ain't trying to hurt nobody, so get ready quick on the double, cause it's time for Midnight Edge after dark.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back, and we're live. We've got Robert Meyer Burnett tonight, and we're going to talk Friday the 13th.
I like turtle.
Welcome, everybody, once again to the program. We have a full panel plus a very special guest tonight. That's right. We're not going to waste too much time here. We got Script Doctor hanging in here. How you doing, Script Doctor?
Doing well. We got a hot day over here, so I'm enjoying the heat. One of these days, I'm going to get a suntan. It's going to be awesome.
It was like 90 degrees Fahrenheit here today, so I hear you. We also have Scribe Light. How you doing?
Doing all right. Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Glad to have you.
Hey.
We got all 32 flavors of Nick Weiser here. How you doing?
Good. Happy to be here. Hello, chat. Hello, wrenches. Hello to the dudes on panel. And I'm happy to hear R&B's on the show this night. I can't wait to get educated some more.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about some Jason with Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Welcome back to the program. We're glad to have you here as always.
Dude, I'm happy to be here. If I told you what's going on in my familial personal life compared to my professional life, the dichotomy is quite an interesting tightrope to be walking. I welcome the distraction. Thank you.
Well, hopefully it's not that bad. So yeah.
One side's great. The professional side's great.
Well, I hate to hear about the personal side then, yeah. But I think we all have those days. And we also have with us Mr. CC Karaoke also coming in from Canada because we love our Canadians here.
Glad to be here. It's not as hot as where it is in Script Doctor's part of the country, but yeah, it looks like there's going to be a really exciting conversation coming up here, and I'm really interested in hearing about what's going on with this because clearly a lot of information was dumped into this article.
Yeah, I mean, some of this stuff I know Robert was kind of privy to, but he could only say so much at the time. But now that all this is out there, I'm glad you're able to kind of talk about some of it with us. And we're going to break it all down here in just a bit about the whole A24 Crystal Lake series that was in production for Peacock with Brian Fuller as the head of that. But we also have Price of Reason here we have to introduce. How you doing, Price?
Good. And I'm happy to be here, not only because Robert is here, but also because I grew up watching all those Friday the 13th movies, and I'm actually knowledgeable about the franchise.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm a big fan. Even some of the worst ones I know too well. And Goddess, you didn't miss anything yet. We're just getting started. That's right. Jeremy Winfield has been here for a year. Well, congratulations on that. We're happy to have had you for a year, Mr. Winfield. Thank you for being here. So
I've even seen the one that he went to New York, and I'm ashamed to say that I saw it in the theater.
Ouch.
No, don't be. Come on.
I think the only one I saw in the theater, I think, was Jason Goes to Hell, so don't feel bad. And the remake, unfortunately. But yeah, so this story come through this morning. Inside the drowning of Crystal Lake, how unpaid writers, inexperienced execs, and questionable bookkeeping undid the Friday the 13th series. So this just came out in the wrap this morning, as I said. But Robert, you've been following this for a while because, of course, you're personally friends with Mr. Fuller. So you've been probably privy to a bit of information that you can't share, and some of it that you probably can share now that this is out there. So, yeah, I don't know if you wanted to break down what was in this, or if you wanted me to kind of go through the article, or how you wanted to present.
Well,
this,
I think we can do both. I think what's really interesting about this franchise is Friday the 13th has been locked up in a rights issue for quite some time, where there is a I won't get into all the legalities, but if a writer has created a franchise, and that franchise after a certain number of years, I think it's 35 years.
Yes.
The rights to that franchise revert back to the original writer of the material. Now, Friday the 13th is unique and it's interesting because Victor Miller, who was work for hire on the first Friday the 13th for Sean Cunningham, who directed it, he did not create the Jason Voorhees that we all know and love that was introduced in Friday the 13th 3D with the hockey mask. The villain in the first Friday the 13th movie is Pamela Voorhees, Jason's mom, and Jason pops out of the lake at the end of the movie. But Jason was not any kind of an iconic killer. You didn't know whether he was a cadaver, whether it was a dream sequence, whether it was real. And then in Friday the 13th Part 2, he's wearing a bag on his head, a sack. And so who created what, who owns what? But Victor Miller he created the original Friday the 13th. And there was a huge legal battle between him and Sean Cunningham, and it was going through the courts. And eventually, I think it was like 2 years ago, that Victor Miller
not
was
even quite, but yeah, probably.
was granted, his rights back.
Pretty much everything but Friday the 13th, the name. Yeah, that's kind of how it went, because they had decided, because this is what the big argument, you're right, because the big argument over was they were trying to say that Victor was a work for hire. That didn't go through. He actually he created all these characters. He won that argument. But then the big argument was whether or not the version of Jason that most people consider quote unquote Jason, as you were just explaining, and the hockey mask and all that stuff, was actually created by Victor Miller, since his version of Jason was a kid who drowned in the lake and was technically dead already. So there was a big back and forth on that whole thing. And what it came down to is that the court had decided that it is, in fact, the same version of Jason, regardless of what form it took. So Victor also won the rights to that. So at the end of the day, Sean S. Cunningham only got now the name Friday the 13th, and he is making a Friday the 13th movie. But my understanding, and I don't know if you guys know anything about this or not, but is that it's just going to be basically based on the idea of bad luck on Friday the 13th, kind of along the lines of
the TV series or something when they did.
Kind of like, yeah. So it has nothing to do with Crystal Lake, nothing to do with, any of the characters or anything to do with the Friday the 13th franchise that we know it to this point. But that's also the reason why, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this series was going to be called Crystal Lake and had nothing to do with the title Friday the 13th, correct? Because that's the part
that's right. And what's really interesting about this is that Brian Fuller, who created, in my mind, one of the greatest horror television series of all time, which is Hannibal, Brian Fuller took a previously existing mythology, both from Thomas Harris's novels and then in the various films. There were actually 5 Hannibal movies made. There was Manhunter, there was Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal, Red Dragon, which is a remake of, a readaptation of Red Dragon, and then Hannibal Rising. And I think what Brian Fuller and his staff was able to do, reimagining and reinventing well-worn mythology, was pretty genius. And going back, that show has lost none of its power. It holds up to multiple viewings. It's just an impeccably crafted descent into madness and hell. And it's from Mads Mikkelsen and Hugh Dancy's performance. The show's amazing. So to have Brian Fuller, who loves the Friday the 13th franchise, to come on board and do what he did for Hannibal to the Friday the 13th universe is something that was, let me tell you, the word delicious to talk about something Hannibal Lecter would know something about comes to mind. And I was extraordinarily excited that he was going to collaborate with Jim Danger Gray and other people like Vincent Natali, who directed Cube and Split, and Kimberly Pierce, who directed Boys Don't Cry. Like you said, Tom, early before we went on, it was like a horror cornucopia of awesomeness.
Yeah. Kevin Williamson is set to direct an episode, I think it was. So yeah, like
their version of the Red Wedding.
And he he wrote that episode too. Yeah, that's what it says in the article. Yeah.
And I'm friends with Brian, and I was just curious to see what they were doing. And I'm not going to say, I will not confirm or deny, but Brian might have given me a peek at a script. And you could tell from, and also he's been making his feature directorial debut on a film called Dust Bunny. He was in Europe making that. But the first script for Crystal Lake, which is dated 1969. That was the title of the episode, because that's when it takes place. The first 10 minutes, the first 10 pages of the script, and I did read, I might have read the first 2, was extraordinary. I mean, it set this nightmarish, surrealistic tone. The tone of it was, Pamela Voorhees was dealing with the ramifications of the death of her son, still in incredible pain over his drowning. And it was, the first 10 pages are right out of the Hannibal playbook. And I'm like, oh my God. I don't know why, but for me, it elevated the entire Friday the 13th franchise. I mean, let's face it. I did see Friday the 13th opening weekend in the theater, at the Coliseum Theater in downtown Seattle. I saw every single Friday the 13th movie in the theater. And these are not high art, but it's a long running. I mean, we're looking at Friday the 13th debuted in 1980. So what are we, 44 years into it or something? And to have something new and unique that elevates the franchise is miraculous in and of itself. So I was totally stoked about what Brian and Jim Danger Gray, who co-wrote the second script with him. I'm like, if this is the quality of the show, this is going to be, again, Hannibal level. It's going to take a existing franchise and elevate it the way Hannibal elevated what was already a tremendous franchise in terms of the books and the movies that have been made.
And that's where I was kind of curious, because it'd be the first time that the series had really been taken seriously,
right,
since the original film, if you kind of think about it. And I think it's almost brilliant and perfect, because normally I'm not a fan of prequels, midquels kind of thing, because like I feel like you're not going to tell us anything we don't really know. But Mrs. Voorhees and the whole background of Jason has been talked about throughout the fan community for years. There's variations on the history. The video game seemingly kind of took a stance on that it is now the canon as far as the history of the characters go. But I was interested to see what this was going to do, because Victor Miller, a lot of his inspiration for the original film, and I think part of the reason why he won the argument in the case, was that he based a lot of his notion of the original Friday the 13th on Psycho and just reversed the roles.
Right.
And that was kind of the whole key to it. And what you're doing here is kind of like what, they did with the Psycho movie and did the Bates Motel series. So I can okay, I can see this. We're going to get to see Pamela Voorhees younger. And that's the other thing we learned from this article, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, is that they were already either in talks or looking at Charlize Theron to play the part.
Yep.
Like, that's inspired casting for young Mrs. Voorhees. I mean, can you get any more perfect or brilliant than that? And then not only that, Brian had teased that we are going to see Jason in various forms, and that the other seasons would kind of happen in between and around the movies that we already know, and it wouldn't disregard the franchise that we already know. See, that was the other thing that stuck with me, because like Hannibal, Bates Motel, they're kind of their own versions of that franchise. So I was also kind of curious at how Brian was going to make it all work in uniform with, let's face it, the Friday the 13th series isn't exactly high caliber art, right? But that's part of the reason why we love it. But there is a mythos to the background of where Jason may have come from, who Pamela was, who Jason's real father is, who raised him, all these questions that have never been answered. The stuff that was rumored about that happened at the campground before Mrs. Voorhees went on her final killing spree and such. So I would almost imagine that the first season or two would lead up to the first movie, and then from there we'd kind of learn what happened to Jason in between the first two movies, how he did get resurrected, or did he not drown to begin with? That's the questions I think a lot of people have.
Yeah.
And I think this series probably would have answered, is my point. But yeah.
And this Wrap article that dropped today, it was written by Drew Taylor at thewrap.com, goes into this, and there's a lot of really troubling elements to this, beginning with the fact that according to this article, they had an $85 million budget that was coming to them from Peacock. Now, if that's your budget, if you have an $85 million budget and they've ordered 8 episodes, that's a pretty healthy budget for
that's a pretty good budget,
horror TV show. So if you know that that's your budget, if that's what the network is given to you, you back into those numbers. But the first thing you have to have before you can really actually honestly budget something are finished scripts. I mean, I've worked in television and movies for a long time, and usually I've worked really pretty much at the indie level, but any producer worth their salt will tell you, okay, if your budget's $85 million and you have to make 8 hours of television, it's pretty cut and dried. Your initial impulse would be to break it down, call each episode $9 million. That's a really healthy budget.
Right.
But then, for instance, just the other day, or is it today, we celebrated the anniversary of the Best of Both Worlds, the Star Trek The Next Generation episode. Well, Rick Berman was able to keep Star Trek The Next Generation on time and on budget, because when he wanted more special effects or more bang for his buck, what he would have to do is figure out how to save money on other episodes so we would have more money to put into an episode like the Best of Both Worlds, build some more sets, have some more effects. But you have to know that in advance by having scripts that were finished, or know that you're going to be doing that. So one of the first things that you do when you're budgeting anything is you have to look at the scripts. And the thing about this particular show, take away whatever recriminations there are with people, especially in this rap article, they did not have finished scripts because A24 did not, they did not pay the writers.
Yeah, that was something you were telling me early on, and it is brought up here. And
it's brought up here extensively.
Yeah, and before we get too much
should
farther
speak to this.
Yeah, I want him to, but just before we get past this, I just want to bring up the whole budgetary thing. So you had $85 million for 8 episodes, right? So that's like almost $11 million per episode, almost, roughly, right? Just for some perspective on this, the first original Friday the 13th film was made for $500,000. Okay, I did the inflation on that. That's $2 million in today's standards. Now, the average of each film after that was anywhere between 2 to 3, maybe 4 or 5 million, once you get later down the series. But even then, they were keeping it under $10 million. So even with the inflation, each one of these episodes is budgeted for about 2 of the movies, is what my math is figuring out here. So,
and it's not like this is like they're not globe trotting.
Exactly.
It's
just
Crystal
Friday
Lake.
the 13th. Exactly. It's all taking place in mostly one place. Like, that's kind of where you were getting with the amortizing. But on the writing front, so yeah. So script, you had heard a few things about this with them not paying the writers. What's going on there?
Okay, so actually I have a very similar story to this. So at the beginning of this year, I got to work on a development room for a show. And part of the
script, can you define for the audience what that means?
So a development room is usually where a show creator or showrunner gathers some writers to help develop what the season of that show is going to be like. And you don't necessarily write all the scripts, but you do break down the story, and you focus on a pilot. You get that into the best shape as possible. And then you start working on subsequent other scripts up until a cutoff point. That cutoff point is usually when you pitch what you've developed to the studio that you've made the first agreement with, to get either the green light or the go ahead to at least the next phase for a green light, where they start putting into production the pilot while you complete the rest of the show. And most of the times, especially after the recent WGA NBA deal, if you are in a development room, it comes with a promissory that development room gets converted into a proper writer's room, which means you are now on staff of that show for that first season, and you get to negotiate additional contracts to that afterwards if the season decides to continue on to further seasons for the show. What's interesting here is that A24 was one of the first to sign an agreement, an interim agreement during the writer's strike, promising that to Brian Fuller and his writer's room. And then after all that hoopla of the strike was resolved, A24 backs out, which means that the development room, which was promised to be a writer's room, is now not working anymore. They are not finished with the scripts that they have already sort of completed. There's subsequent drafts that are needed to be done in order to refine the season, identify the details of the budget, and then complete out the last 2 episodes that are supposed to be written. And each writer that was part of that room is owed $100,000 as a part of their initial deal that A24 was essentially saying they don't have to pay.
And here's another thing. The writer's room, the development room, they have 6 scripts. They can't listen to studio notes on those scripts and make any changes until they've been converted into an official writer's room, because they're not getting paid as writers now. They're only a development room. And, in Brian's case and Jim Danger Gray's case, they have two, in my estimation, 2 scripts, the pilot and the episode 2, 1970, that are ready to shoot. And they were completed. And anybody that's trying to say that Brian Fuller wasn't doing his job while he was making his film Dust Bunny is being disingenuous, because the proof's in the pudding. Those scripts exist. They're ready to shoot. And the other scripts, you know, they were dealing with the fact that there was production. I mean, there's always production issues, but they wanted to shoot in the summer and in the winter. So they were going to do block shooting like many shows do. You go out on location, you shoot on Crystal Lake, as you try and get all like you shoot part of episode 1, part of episode 2, maybe episode 4, maybe episode 7. You do block shooting. And in the winter episodes, there's block shooting as well. So the tightly constructed 8 scripts here were really important. And 6 of them, 2 of them are basically finished. I mean, I haven't read them all, but there were 4 others ready to go, ready to, you know, continue on. They were going to finish them.
Well, and the way they're talking about the Williamson one, that would be another one that I think would be done already. So you have another high-profile writer who probably didn't.
I think that was one of the winter episodes that they that they were waiting.
Sorry, I just wanted to bring that up because it's not like Kevin Williamson is a nobody in Hollywood. For those who may not recognize the name, he's the guy who created Scream. But anyhow, go on.
And I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But I just wanted to bring that up too. So we got people not being paid. You've got a show that's almost complete writing. They've got at least 5 or 6 scripts already from what you're talking about. 2 that you're, in your opinion, are ready to shoot. But yet their claim was that the production was haphazard. Was that what was it? What was the word they used here? I'm trying to remember.
I still don't understand how a production can be haphazard if the writers haven't been paid for their scripts yet.
Right. Well, that's kind of the thing. Yeah, it's clearly something up above that's a problem. And this goes to another point, Script. I don't know if you have anything more to say about the writing element, but they even bring up the $300,000 deposit that had been put on soundstage in Canada. And you actually heard something about this.
Yeah, I heard a few days ago on a screenwriting Discord that someone at A24 doesn't know what studio they put the deposit on, because it was the Ontario one, which would probably be similar to what they did Hannibal at, which I know because I worked in set and cost and props for Hannibal for the last season at the same time while I was doing Suicide Squad. Or would they be doing something out in Burnaby, British Columbia? And because they have a winter set, I'm thinking they would go to Ontario because you actually get snow in Ontario off the lakes there. Right. You don't really get that in British Columbia. But the fact that I heard from a colleague on a Discord saying that A24 doesn't know where they rented that location to. Like, they don't know if it was Ontario or British Columbia. Like, that is asinine. They should know that. And then the other part too is it's around $80.5 million US. That's around 110 Canadian in conversion, which means they proposed this season with a predetermined budget block that the writers would have to work to. And because of that, you need the studio to give notes on the episodes to make sure that they fall in line with the projected budget that they're hoping to reach. And then this article says that they're probably going to go over budget. One person claiming 100%, which I call BS, because there's no way to determine that. And then another one saying, well, maybe 2 to 4 million. It's like, well, yeah, but you can still amortize that because most of that budget is going into the construction of the Crystal Lake set. And I would assume that they'd probably use a place like in Ontario. There's a number of lakes that are isolated near the Hamilton region. There's one further north called Brandy Lake, which would be perfect for shooting. You'd have to build a set there, which would probably cost around maybe $10 million, especially if you want to get a proper camp and base camp established just right outside of the normal filming location and basic housing. Because again, a lot of these lakes, they are in the middle of nowhere, so you don't really want to have a 4 to 5 hour drive for your talent to go there. You want to actually have like a lot for trailers, or you want to just establish some sort of base camp where they can stay for the duration of the shoot. So all that would have to be factored in, but you cannot do that unless you know what it is you're shooting.
Right. It blows me away when I can't get over this script issue, because there's in this article, it says A24 also argued over with Fuller and Gray over the scripts. A24 would say the writer's room is Jim and Brian's living rooms. So what?
Big deal.
I mean, during the writer's strike, who cares where they couldn't work anyway, but who cares where the writer's room was? And you know what? Officially, you can't work, but show me a writer that isn't always writing on something. A professional writer is always writing. You think during the writer's strike, they weren't thinking about these scripts? And it's so bizarre to me that there are 6 scripts that were written for this show, and they still haven't converted their writers room into, or their development room into a real writers room where they're paying the screen. I mean, to me, it's academic. They wrote the scripts. They did what they were supposed to do. You've got the budget from Peacock at 85 million or whatever. Where's the problem? You know, like you brought up, Scripty. So what people don't understand is, like, every script will have a budget for, say, construction. And whenever you're doing a show, like, for instance, a Star Trek show, there's a lot of sunk costs at the beginning of making a Star Trek show because they have to build everything from scratch. And what you do is you amortize the cost of those scripts across, or of the set construction across each script. So while you might spend, let's say you spend $10 million building the Enterprise or something, you parcel out that those expenditures in each one of the scripts you shoot for the season. And that's how you justify the upfront costs. But inexperienced production people, especially people that have never produced television or movies before, don't really understand that. It's hard for them to grasp these things if they've never done it before.
Well,
so they don't know how to budget.
So I was just going to say, they were also probably building the cabins for the Crystal Lake. They're probably building, they're probably redoing the small town that's next to Crystal Lake, I'd imagine. And they're probably trying to make it look a lot like the original films if Brian's whole idea was that they were supposed to match up with them. But even then, you're still only talking about minimal costs compared to something like a Star Trek, which you were comparing it to in comparison. But
Starfleet Academy is the biggest set we've ever built.
Lost script. He'll be back. I think he accidentally hit a button or lost his connection, but I'm sure he'll be back. So yeah, that was kind of my point, though, is even then, yeah, here he is.
Yeah, sorry,
even then,
Streamlabs kicked me out. Well, yeah, because all this stuff is really off the rack. The other part, too, is that whatever code name Crystal Lake was going to use, they were going to use to the benefit to get discounts on materials for building. And again, it's all converted to Canadian dollars. There's Canadian crews that would have participated into that. Whatever town they would have gotten, they would have found one that had been as close as possible to the one from the existing movie, which, especially in Ontario, there are hundreds of small towns that could pass for the town outside of Crystal Lake without any real change to the facades. It's eerie.
Well, I'm trying to figure this out because A24 is not normally a stupid company, right? Like, they're along the lines of trying to think of a good comparison. Not quite Blumhouse, but they buy and they do indie type films.
Well, that's the thing. They mostly acquire films that other people make.
Exactly. So that's kind of where maybe I'm wondering where the problem was. You guys are kind of getting to the point. So yeah, do you think that's what the issue is here?
Probably, because they've had deals with television, TV shows on HBO Max. However, HBO Max leads the budgetary stuff on that. A24 was really just the people that put the team together and make sure the rights were in order. So they didn't actually have any hands-on experience with those shows. In this case here with Peacock is just like, we're just going to act as the distributor. A24 is going to act as the production overseer. We're going to liaise between them and the writers team and with Brian Fuller and co. And hopefully this will just go smoothly. But I think NBC Universal screwed up because they actually should have taken a bit more of an investment, like a physical investment in communications with the team, because from this article and from some of the stuff I've heard, it seems like A24 was kind of, I mean, I hate to say it, but was kind of pulling a J.J. Abrams here, where they were kind of moving around and playing with some money that they shouldn't have been touching.
I got that. I mean, there's a couple of paragraphs in this article. It says an individual close to A24 said Fuller was too busy working on his upcoming movie Dust Bunny to pay attention to Crystal Lake. I'm sorry, but the scripts that Brian finished show that that's simply untrue.
Yeah, and you were talking about it. Look, I think I can say this much. You and I were talking about this way back when it was first announced, because you and I both got excited about it.
Ghibli.
And you were telling me kind of, and I'm not going to say too much more than this. You can volunteer whatever information you want. You know, basically how excited Brian was about this project, I think is something I can say. Oh. And that, I think, bled through the things you were telling me and stuff like that. But yeah, you couldn't even say much then.
Well, no, I mean, and I really didn't know much then, but Brian Fuller, I did an interview with him back for my 400th show, and we talked specifically about his philosophy of horror. And the man lives and breathes the horror genre. He's a cineast par excellence. I mean, the guy knows his shit. And, it says in this article, it's really interesting. An individual close to A24 said Fuller was too busy working on his upcoming movie Dust Bunny to pay attention to Crystal Lake. That's a deflective excuse for somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about, who just wants to put it on someone else. This has happened to him before in Star Trek Discovery.
I was going to say, this is the same freaking excuse they use for Star Trek.
Of course. I mean, as it was explained to me, Les Moonves says, well, why can't you make Star Trek for like the original and make each episode for $1 million? Again, when you have people at the top who have never actually produced anything, they don't understand. And in the case of Star Trek Discovery, they certainly didn't understand about the amortization of how Star Trek has huge upfront costs. That anybody,
I still don't understand that.
I mean, they just don't get it. And American Gods. What's really interesting about American Gods, I thought the first season of American Gods was tremendous, and then you see what happened to it. And what was the difference? Michael Green and Brian Fuller were not part of the second season. It's not always about budget. It's that people don't understand how budgets work. And I think, there's always a production company, when they're given an $85 million budget by Peacock, the first thing they think of is, do we have to spend all of it? We can cover our overhead. We can pay our executives. We can do all kinds of things. Maybe we can make the show for $6 million.
Well, and this is something I brought up recently where we're actually having people admit to this, and this is something we were being told in the background before, and now especially with streaming series and streaming movies coming into play, we're calling it the cost of doing business with these people, because basically what we're learning is half of the money that they're getting for these things are going right back into the pockets of executives and producers.
100%.
Yeah.
And
before anything else gets done.
That's why when I start hearing this, there's a lot of talk about this show is over budget. How could a show be over budget if you don't have your finished scripts to budget from?
And they haven't paid the writers. They've essentially admitted that they weren't even paying the full amount of what the production was worth at this time. You can't be over budget for that. You haven't spent anything.
Right. Yeah, you haven't.
That's the scam.
I mean, you haven't even hired your cast.
Right.
Like, if Charlize Theron was going to do this, maybe she would have gotten, I don't know, some exorbitant A-list actress price per episode. Well, that's going to impact your budget.
Yeah, like, she's going to get like a good 10, 15 million easy. Yeah, you're right.
Well, this is hypothetical. If as a hypothetical, if Charlize Theron, an Academy Award-winning actress, playing Eileen Wuornos in Monster, if she comes on to play Pamela Voorhees, and your budget is, say, what'd you say, Tom, $11 million an episode?
Roughly.
Let's say it's $11 million an episode. How much does Charlize Theron get?
2.5 her quote.
Was 2.5 her quote?
I think 2.5 is currently her quota for TV if she's going to do streaming stuff.
Well, that's not bad.
So,
then,
but you're looking at per episode,
per
though.
episode, yes.
Oh, per episode, then I was about right then, 10, 15 million.
But that's 2.3 million. That's just shy of 25% of your episode budget. That's a lot of money.
I have a question for you guys.
25, yeah.
Could it be that Peacock were just trying to bail out because they thought of this before the strike and before all these other financial issues, and they were just looking for a creative way to get rid of the project so they don't have to pay for it? Could it be that that's the reason why all of this is happening?
Peacock or A24?
I think that Peacock and A24 are no strangers to each other. At the end of the day, Peacock is the one that needs to back them or whatever it is. I don't think that they make decisions alone. This is just my theory, and I could be wrong. Maybe Peacock's, somebody high up there looking at how much money they're losing regularly, just said, hey, you know what? This was a good idea before the writer's strike. Now, this seems like an annoying idea where this thing seems very expensive. We don't want to do it. Find a creative way to get rid of it. And then they said, well, Brian Fuller, he's so busy with his movie. He can't take this project seriously. Let's get rid of him.
See, I would think that would work, except for the fact that A24 and Peacock signed an interim agreement during the writer's strike to allow this show to continue.
Right. Yeah. And not only that, the thing is A24 is getting the money from Peacock, right? So here's, I see where you're coming from, Price, but I'm not sure that could be it, because I think that A24 set Fuller up to fail for some reason, because they want to, I think, here's my theory. He is budgeting and writing the show for the entire budget that they're getting. A24 wants to pocket at least half that fucking money. So
they
that's
even
why they
say that say this in the episode, in this article. It says each episode of Crystal Lake, which was intended to have 8 per season, was budgeted at around $9.6 million. But according to sources, A24 wanted to cut that in half. Now here's my again A24, and I love you. I'm a member of A24.
Right.
You guys sent me Lamb on Blu-ray for my birthday. Thank you very much. But how does A24 want to cut something in half when they do not have their episodes finished?
Right.
How can you even have a budget discussion? What you're talking about is that big number, and then it says one source told the Wrap it was all set at camp. It was all very feasible. Okay, that's said by somebody who's an idiot. First of all, because it's not just set at a camp. These characters have lives outside of.
That's
being
what I was said about
camp.
The town and stuff. That's what I was talking about.
And there's lots of other stuff going on. And this is my problem with executives that work at production companies that have never actually worked in production. They don't have any understanding of how productions are budgeted and mounted. And yet they make these stupid comments about,
well, it's just set at a summer camp. So how much is that going to cost?
Is it? You know, if you'd read the scripts, you'd know that it doesn't just take place at a summer camp.
Well, and that gets us back around to why I think they set Fuller up to fail. Because as we read here, and as you guys have been pointing out, they pulled whatever funding he was getting for writing, so he couldn't get his final drafts in. It even points that out here, kind of like what you guys were getting to. So they couldn't even do the budgets off those drafts. So my point,
this is where for me, Scripty, it breaks down. Why would they do that? They're committed to a writing staff. They have a writing staff that's written at least 6 scripts. The other 2 scripts were in process. Why would they just decide, the first people that signed on to the new interim agreement or the new minimum basic agreement, whatever you want to call it, why would they do this?
I don't know.
I think they want to do a smaller budgeted show, and they don't. This is the same thing that happened to Fuller on Star Trek. And this is why, Robert, I wish we had that little piece of information in there that what inserted Kurtzman into this and where all of a sudden did the balloon budget come from? Because I wonder if the Netflix deal was always part of this or if the Netflix deal came with Kurtzman, because that's the only thing that makes sense to me. Because when you got Moonves going, why can't you do this shit for cheaper? And then you bring in Kurtzman and the budget goes twice as much.
3 times.
3 times in some cases. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I see here is what I see is these executives wanting to keep most of this money, and Fuller's going, no, I need that money. I don't even know how much money this show's going to cost yet. Like you guys said, if they had actually budgeted the show, you know, it's going to cost $2.5 million per episode for Charlize Theron alone, right? That's not including anybody else. That's just her. Okay, there's all kinds of other people, characters, and that's why I was bringing up before. You have Camp Crystal Lake to build. You have the city that's involved in this. There's all kinds of history that's already hinted at and previewed in the other films to where they talk about things that we're expecting to see in here. So yes, is it going to be expensive like a Star Trek show? No, but you're still going to need somewhat of a budget to work with. And even if you do an episode without Charlize, that's still my rough guesstimate was 11. Well, it's more like actually 10.4 million per episode they'd have if you split up 85 million.
You also have to factor
and you also
in
have to shave off things off the top too, because they have to prepay all the writers and stuff. But go ahead, Script. Sorry.
Well, you also have the fact that this is a period piece, which means you have to rent vintage cars of that era. My father's best friend has one of the largest libraries in Canada of vintage cars. He would be the one that'd be negotiating with them. Those are very expensive. Like he has to, because they're so expensive to maintain, it's very expensive to rent out. So you're also looking at a couple of million for those cars, which means that you have to start budgeting for, okay, if we're going to do an exterior shot of either a winter or a summertime set of, say, the town or the camp, we need to actually schedule those as single days and then shoot them all in order to keep everything done, and then cut up that footage and spread it across the other episodes of that nature as well. Part of me suspects that, and this is a new term I've been coining up because I've been seeing it a lot, especially with like the Alec Baldwin case. I'm calling them Band-Aid producers. These are people that don't know anything about the production, so they come up with these quick ideas that they think is just going to cover up the wound, but not actually treat the injury when it comes to spending and problem solving. It's just a bandage to block everything out. Oh, let's just cut it in half. Well, what's okay? If you cut it in half, what's going to happen to the rest of that money that's not being spent? Tell me. If you can't tell me, then I'm calling you a thief, because that's exactly what it is. There's no other way, because the money is technically allocated already from NBC Universal at this point.
Yeah, well, again, this article says, according to a Crystal Lake source, A24 was trying to make the show for dramatically less than the 85 million Peacock was giving them to make it. Because here's the thing. Peacock says, okay, we're going to give you 85 million as long as they deliver a show that Peacock finds acceptable, they've already spent that money. So Peacock's like, yep, we know that we're getting 8 episodes of this show. How they get those episodes once they've spent the money is really, as long as the shows are good, Peacock's happy.
Which takes me back to my point is I think they've already pre-spent a bunch of this money into their pockets. And look, I'm not going to sit here and fault them. That's kind of part of the way you do business. If you're a producer of your company,
it is.
But what we're getting at here is they're getting greedy, right? And that's the point I've been getting at too, because we've learned from like the Roadhouse deal and a few other of these streaming movie deals that basically the production company is literally pocketing half of the money right up front. And then the other half of the money gets allocated to the budgets and whatever, is left over for the production itself.
Now,
so I think that's what's happened here. And I think they're trying to tell Brian that they don't have the money anymore to do this because it's going to come out of their pockets otherwise. And they have to deliver to Peacock. They have to deliver.
Well,
that's where they're stuck.
I would like to chime in. If you're a famous production company, and you, like, for instance, I produced a movie that Joel Silver was our executive producer of. So it was for Dark Castle. Now, that they were probably going to take 25% of the budget.
And 25% is actually sounds decent, right?
As their fee. So this is if you have a production company and a well-known producer and all that, they handle a lot of the infrastructure and they have their people that they can put in place. So there is a justification. I don't want to make it seem like
exactly
A24 shouldn't take a certain percentage per episode for their own, because they have their overhead they have to pay. They have their infrastructure that they have to pay. They have their people that they have to pay.
Half? They're taking half his shit.
Mfufu.
Am I hearing correctly here that you're talking like 40 million for the production and
yes,
budget?
That's all they're pretty much leaving.
And then
for
you're
like
also paying Charlize Theron another 20 million on top of that. So you're already up to like 60 million out of your 85 million budget.
And that's what I said happened here. That's what I think went down is they're like,
hopefully not that much, but that is definitely, there's a great scene in Breaking Bad when Jonathan Banks, they've made their first sale together when they're all working together after Gus Fring has been killed, and Jonathan Banks is taking away all the money and go, we have to pay for these people, we have to pay for these people, and we have to pay for these people. This is how we do business, and it leaves them a much smaller chunk of the pie than they thought they were getting. It's a pretty famous scene, but that's how it works. Mm-hmm. And ultimately I get it, but also you still have to make a show. And if A24 gets $85 million from the thing that really bothers me though, is they had an obligation that they signed a contract to treat their writers, especially Brian Fuller and his co-writer, now, to treat them correctly. And they
is there any grounds for them to do anything legally or through the guild at all? Script
100%.
Yes,
that's what I was curious about.
I believe a grievance was already filed with the guild.
Yeah, the WGA just cannot say anything publicly at this point because they're still in the process with essentially representing their talent along with their own representation towards A24 and whatever they're going to do. So there'll probably also be an investigation as well as to what changed. And then also, because again, they added interim agreements. So the interim agreement is slightly different than the normal MBA that was ratified. But usually in interim agreements like this, they're supposed to say that this interim agreement covers up until the point of ratification of the actual MBA, in which case whatever happens in the MBA overwrites whatever's a part of the interim agreement or is subject to renegotiation with the parties involved of the interim agreement. So we don't know what's going to happen on there. There might have been something in the interim agreement which said, well, we reserve the right to hold off on converting the development room to the writer's room after we get some further details or further budgetary, or whether or not NBC is going to reserve the right to force majeure the show or what have you. All those stipulations would have to be reviewed. But for me, from my perspective, and full disclosure here, I have worked in a very, very temporary fashion with writers' rooms. I've been brought in for like a day or for one episode to help out or to oversee or to shadow or what have you. Just this past winter was my first attempt at a chance of actually getting seated as a staff writer on a show. And if that show goes to pilot, which I hope it does, that will happen. It'll be fantastic. I'll be super happy.
Well, and explain to the audience why that's a big deal for a writer.
Because it's really hard to get staffed on a show. I mean, there's some writers
really like steady work, right?
It's steady work. The other part too is that it takes unless it's also right time, talent, proper networking, and the one thing you cannot control, which is luck. Like I've known writers who have been in the industry for 30 years, who are TV writers, who write great pilots, They get stuff around town, but they have also never been staffed on a show. Like, it just doesn't happen. Sometimes they're able to make work. Sometimes they're able to do what I do, which is like come in and help a writer or a showrunner, like tweak up the script as a writer's assistant for a limited term contract, all within the WGA rates and standards. And then they just go off onto the next thing. They do self-produced stuff, what have you, because they do whatever they can to stay working and stay in the business. For a lot of these guys here, like Kevin Williamson and whatnot, this is also like a huge break for them outside of the normal stuff. Because Kevin Williamson, he does features. He's done TV, but this would be, his wheelhouse and something that he would be like, with this show, I could do this for 2 seasons, and then I could probably do a Scream television series that was way better than that thing on E, a couple years back, and actually get my franchise back or whatever. He could parlay that into something bigger for him, which is what a writer's room is. It's a stepping stone that helps you get to the next part. Like Terry Matalas, he created 12 Monkeys, but he wasn't the showrunner for the first season because they needed someone with more experience to help him understand the functions of the show, solve problems, and teach him how to solve those problems so that he could be the better showrunner for seasons 2, 3, 4, and then, go on to do Star Trek Picard season 3. And then now it looks like Vision over at Marvel. Like, that's the graduated process. And that comes from his dedication of hard work. And also the fact that he got very lucky that his talent allowed him to open those opportunities and create those connections.
Right.
So it all factors into this case. And right here, what we have here is we have this entire team. They're very lucky. They got in sync with Peacock and A24 with regards to what they wanted to do with Camp Crystal Lake. They started their initial deal. The strike hit. They got an interim agreement, which basically covered what they wanted to do because it basically assured them that there was commitment to get this show made and released. And now we have this backtracking. Now we have this expose essentially saying that A24 wants 50% of the budget slashed, in which case they're going to keep the remaining half, which means they probably have a side project that they want to do as well. The other part too, when it comes to productions that take their 20 or 25%, that doesn't just cover their overhead, that covers for insurance and emergencies. So in the case where they do possibly go over budget, they can say, well, at least, okay, we'll take that out of our 25%, and whatever that budget is, we will allocate that to whatever revenues the show earns to pay that back off, plus a little premium on top of that to cover the expenses. And ideally, we will take that number, we'll factor it into our subsequent season, especially if the show is a hit, so that we can make sure that we can actually get the budget we want up front and not have to go over again and not lose a portion of that 25 or 30, 20 or 25 or 30%, whatever they want to negotiate, because they don't want to do that. And when you have to Robert's point, like Bergman, he figured it out really quick so that he could always be on time and on budget, so that he never had to worry about negotiating with subsequent seasons. And when he started pitching other shows like Deep Space Nine and Voyager and then Enterprise, he's like, listen, I can do it. And, I can tell you what the budget is going to be. And I've got this track record that says I can do it. So yes, it's a little more, but that's due to inflation, due costs, new special effects, all that stuff. But I've got it planned out and I know how to make it work.
He was on time and on budget for 25 seasons of Star Trek over 18 years.
Yes. Yeah. He owned the 1990s at Paramount, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, and then it also says here that as far as Peacock was concerned, it was exactly what they wanted to hear for the pitch. And then right after, 2 days after the notes on the call, they fired Fuller and Gray. And that's what led us to where we're at now. So yeah, none of this makes sense. I'm going to open the floor a little bit because I know some of the guys on the panel have some questions for you guys. Scribe, I know you have one specifically, so let's start with you, and then we'll get to the audience because I know you guys had some super chats and questions too. So Scribe, you had a question about this whole thing for either Robert or Script on the matter.
Yeah, just first off, I'm just blown away by the depth of your guys' knowledge on this entire thing. But of course, you guys would know.
It helps that we've been following it for a couple of years.
Yeah, that too. Peripherally, I've heard bits and pieces, but I was curious, since we're talking about budgets and knocking out the writers and greed and everything. So first sort of question, and if you answer this, then maybe I don't have a second one. Were they locked in to 8 episodes? Like they had to deliver 8 to make a show, or was there some wiggle room? Because between the budget concerns and the writers and everything else, I don't know. It seems like somebody at A24 otherwise was trying to play chicken with the budget and the boundaries of things, and they lost. And maybe somebody's trying to deliver 6 instead of 8 to like recoup the rest of the money or something. I don't know. It just seemed kind of goofy to me, the whole thing.
Well, to answer your question, people don't pick these things willy-nilly. So the writers were writing an 8-episode arc. for the first season.
Right.
And the way it was constructed, the idea that 2 of these scripts were going to be in the winter and then 6 of them were going to be during the summer or other months, it was pretty thoughtful. And Brian Fuller is a showrunner, and James Danger Gray, they've worked together in the past. They know what's going on. I mean, Fuller goes back all the way, talk about Star Trek.
I was going to say, he's a veteran.
And Voyager. And so he's created a lot of shows in the past as well. So he is a veteran of how TV shows work, and he knows what's up. And while, if you read, there's a great book actually on the making of Hannibal, the TV series, and it while it's not as detailed as I would like, you can see how much detail was put into and thought was put into the show. And just based on the first 2 scripts, you can read those scripts, and it's apparent to anyone that not only are these great scripts, but this is going to make a great TV show, a memorable TV show that I think really would satisfy both fans and people that would never watch a Friday the 13th movie because of what it was trying to do. So they knew what they were doing. The crazy thing about all of this is, why didn't you pay the writers?
Yeah.
Why didn't you convert that writer's room into, why didn't you pay for the scripts? I don't understand. In this article, I don't understand. That is the big piece of this question that I'm very unclear.
I think we've kind of hit the nail. Like, this one is a little bit more cut and dry, it feels like to me, than the Star Trek situation for Fuller. I think, at least in my opinion, that was what I just gave you guys was my whole theory on what went down and where we're at right now. And I got to forgive Scribe for feeling that or being confused, because yes, most of these shows aren't like the Disney shows to where they can just decide, oh, we're only going to do 6 episodes instead of 8 now. Right? Like, when they contract these shows, it's specifically for that number of shows.
Okay.
Because they have that specifically set up in their, it's
because I've heard those other stories for, like, maybe it was just Disney, but I had some idea that depending on the length of the production or anything, there was some wiggle room to suddenly cut episodes or start consolidating scripts or something. So
again, I think that has more to do with who owns the shows and what the contracts are for at the end of the day. But this is basically a contracted show. So
I believe that if within the coming months it'll turn out that there's suddenly somebody else attached to this show with A24, and it's somebody cheaper and no Charlize Theron, and they're going to somehow finish it with a much smaller budget, I'll agree with your theory that they took the budget, they took 50%, and now they couldn't give them any more, and they had some kind of financial issue. If that doesn't appear to be the case, then it doesn't make sense for them. If they already used the money, then now they would have to give it back, and it's a lot of money. So in this case, I would go back to saying that it could be some weird wheeling and dealing between Peacock and A24 to sabotage the show, even though you guys think it's not possible. I've seen it happen before, and it is possible. So I think that over the next few months, when we see how things develop, if the show is really, really dead in the water for sure, then I think that there's something else going on. And if it's made cheaply, then I agree that A24 wasted the money.
Well, that's the only reason I can't see. I mean, I understand where he's coming from, but like, Peacock has no reason to sabotage the show. Like, they're in the position where they spent $85 million. They want a show that's delivered to them that feels like an $85 million show. And what Brian Fuller is presenting here is what I would consider the caliber of that. You've got all these people involved that Robert had brought up, and they're not going to come cheap, especially Kevin Williamson and some of these other folks that we mentioned. Mm-hmm. And if you do get Charlize Theron, that means you're also going to attract some other people who's going to play Elias Voorhees. Well, you're going to want to get somebody who's kind of got some gravitas for that, and stuff. There's going to be other important characters that are part of this series. Are they going to bring in what's his face from Jason Goes to Hell? Or are they going to ignore that? I don't know. I've not seen the scripts.
I was just trying to understand the head math here quickly. Is you said $2 million or something, or let's say ish, for the cars. Is that after the $40 million you're paying out to pockets, or is the $2 million for the car rentals included in that $40 million?
It'd have to be included in that $40 million. It'd have to be allocated as part of the budget for the episodes that they'd be used in.
So basically, what we're explaining here is like A24 is saying, you may think you have $85 million to work with, but we're only giving you 42.
Right.
So you have to make that work. And Brian's like, well, I budgeted this show, at least so far, my scripts have been budgeted with the idea that I'm going to have this much to work with, and that's your job to figure out, or the people on the budgetary side of things, like you guys were saying before, to figure out, are these scripts staying within their budgetary needs, right?
Yeah, because that's where the script notes come from. It's like, well, that's going to be too expensive. How do we negotiate that? The other factor you also have to consider is that NBC has been desperate for a hit to put on Peacock outside of the Yellowstone stuff that they have.
Yep.
That they
because
have
that's technically not theirs. You're right.
Yeah.
Paramount's.
It's Paramount.
Brian Fuller is a sure way guarantee for that because Hannibal was huge on NBC. And they want that over there. And here's the thing. Universal has a couple of other IPs that are really, really strong that they just haven't been able to get into a show yet. Crystal Lake was the closest one. And if Crystal Lake hit well, that would have generated the revenue and the incentive for them to be like, hey, we can make another really good block of television one day a week that we drop on Peacock that is basically like must-see TV again for streaming.
Yeah. So is this going
to do? But A24 might be throwing a wrench into that.
I was going to ask, is this going to be the black eye to A24 that it should be, or do you think that they're going to succeed in blaming it on Fuller and the writers or something? Because it sounds like A24 bit off more than they could chew, or just overpromised, or whatever else. And the buck should stop with them, literally or figuratively, right?
I don't know if I think they're just being greedy. Because, I mean, it's not the first show they've ever produced, as it says here. But
no, they worked with HBO for a couple of things on
The Idol. Ugh.
But if they don't deliver the show, they have to return the money. So they have to finish the show with a cheaper crew.
That's my point. And that's what I'm saying. The only thing that would not make sense is if they bring in somebody like Kurtzman, which turns around and doubles the budget of the show. Which that's where go ahead, Robert.
The thing that I don't understand is they still have to pay for the scripts that were written.
Right.
They still owe these writers money. And it's not like they can walk away from that. And it's like any good producer worth their salt would say, okay, you've got two really good, the pilot's really good. I don't understand, like they're talking, even in this article, talks about somebody waiting in the wings. I mean, they're saying that within the industry, the show is toxic, or radioactive, as they call it in this article. But they say those close to the project on the A24 side said Crystal Lake fell behind on producing scripts. Really?
Can't fall behind if you don't convert the development room to the writer's room.
That's what I don't. I mean, it says all these things that I don't even understand. They can't. They literally, they're Writers Guild members. They can't turn over their scripts to the production company without getting paid as writers of those scripts.
And the WWE grievance could possibly have A24 forfeit their claim to those scripts, which would open up another production company to come in, make a deal with NBC, and pick up Brian Fuller. But I'd be hard pressed to think that would actually end up happening, because you'd know for certain that the budget will go up with regards to that, because there'll be some sort of payout that A24 will make a claim that they are owed that would just inflate the budget and then essentially kill any chances this show has.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of what happened to the Superman film, that the Superman Returns, is that it carried the budget of the films that came before, and that's why it was considered a failure. But that's what I'm trying to figure out here is you can't use the scripts that they already written, or you got to pay for them, which you're right. Like if they go through this deal and they end up getting forced to pay for it, that's money that they're going to have to pay out either way. So that's money that's going to have to come out of the show's budget. And if they have somebody waiting in the wings, to go off of what Price was saying before, what I could see as more of a scenario here is somebody in the upper echelon, whether it's this person they mentioned before that actually flat out fired Fuller and Gray or not, has somebody that they know that is, whispering in there, I can do this cheaper. I can do it. This is just easy shit. This is just kids in a fucking forest getting naked. I can do this for nothing. And the show's probably going to turn into garbage. And no, it's not going to have Charlize Theron in it. That's for goddamn sure.
Well, here's the other part too. When you take a look at what the estimated cost of the scripts were going to be, it was less than $1 million for those 8 episodes and script writing fees. Like that's a deal, especially with a Brian Fuller attached to it.
They'll settle in court. Somebody will file a lawsuit and they'll settle before it goes to court.
Well, it'll go through the Writers Guild, and that's why I was asking scripts.
Yeah,
that's
through
what
like WGA arbitration and grievance files. There'll be some stuff going on there. I don't know if it'll escalate to court. It might.
Honestly, I think A24 is going to have to pay out. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Well, the thing is,
it's pretty obvious.
A24 technically doesn't own the scripts because they haven't paid for them. They may have funded the development room, but that doesn't come with the transfer of property from the scripts that were out of that development room. So if they said, oh, well, we've developed the show, so we broke the story, technically A24 can make a claim that they've owned those details, but if they have the scripts, but they haven't converted it from a development team to a writer's room, that is where you get the actual transfer of the scripts, where the ownership no longer is to the individual writers that wrote those scripts. It's now A24 paid these writers to own these scripts for their production, for their show.
Right.
We have subsequent contracts in place where if we have notes on these scripts, we go back to them, because even though it's primarily for features with television, if you are the staff writer or the showrunner that wrote a script, you are by default guaranteed a second step where they pay you again for script revisions. It's a smaller percentage of what the actual script is overall, but you still get paid for that. And ideally, you get that flood of notes in one go from the studio heads, because they don't want to keep on giving notes back and back and back, because that comes with more price. It inflates the cost of the episode on the development and
when
production.
You're already trying to bring down the cost. Yeah,
exactly. So they want to get it all out in one go. And you have a better chance of that when you hire really good and experienced writers like Brian Fuller and his cohorts on this team. And the fact that they're just not committing to that is really suspicious to me. It feels like it's a win in every
Doesn't
case.
it seem like they found a loophole? If they basically only paid for the development and they supposedly didn't want the scripts, can't they claim that they only paid for development and that they don't need the scripts?
Yes, they can claim they can only do development. They can then hire another writer team for essentially, almost
for
equal
$5.
rate. Well, not necessarily cheaper, but very close to an equal rate to basically pump out scripts that fit within that breakdown if they choose to also use it. They may just say, well, this is our foundation. You can do whatever you want after that. We just want you to see what they were going for, come up with your own interpretation, deliver us 8 scripts by this deadline here. Here's your $90,000 per script. So they save 10 grand on each screenplay script for the episode. And then they go and brush it into production with half the budget of what they're looking for. Which
and here we
kind
go.
of
Here's
happened over on Star Trek Discovery with Brian Fuller and also with why am I spacing on his name? But he directed Wrath of Khan.
Nicholas Meyer.
Nicholas Meyer. Sorry. Like that's basically what happened.
No, and they had written scripts for that were changed.
Yep.
And I think we're seeing right here is like what I think Fuller did, and I think this answer kind of half-ass answers our question from before. He looked like he was budgeting the episodes for around 9.6 million. If you figure that against the 85 million, looks like he was figuring that A24 was going to keep probably about 25% or 20%. It looks like probably if you break down the math. I didn't do it somewhere in there, but figure it out.
76 million with 10 million, so 9 or 10 million for A24.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so and that's where I think the problem come into play, is that A24 wanted more money. So there's probably somebody, like I said, on the other side of this whole thing going, I can do this for cheap. I can do this for cheap. I can do this for cheap. Get rid of that guy. Get rid of that guy. And that's exactly what they did. But they fucked up by not paying the writer's room and not converting it. I think that's what's going to screw them in this situation. And I think it's going to be hilarious. And I don't feel the least bit bad for A24, because if this is the case of what I just said is true, then they did it to themselves, because you already had the work done, right? And I'm sure Brian would have worked within more, boundaries if he had them, but you had to tell him that up front, right, Robert? I mean, he doesn't seem like he's an unreasonable guy.
Of course. I mean, the thing is, there was money that the network, that Peacock wanted to spend, and you think that when you're making that, it's not like this is not Brian's first rodeo. It says here in the article, in a meeting held prior to the shutdown and attended by several sources close to the production, Inman Young, A24's production head, whose previous credits include projects like The Whale, which had a budget of $3 million, and Waves, a budget of $6 million, claimed the show wasn't just slightly over budget, it was 100% over budget.
That doesn't make any sense.
Does that mean the show was going to cost almost $200 million?
Yes.
Or I mean, there's no evidence.
I don't even see
anything. They're not providing. The weird thing, they keep talking about budget. But what? If there's a budget, where's the budget? Let's see it.
What is the money going towards? They should show us what is being listed on.
Yeah, it's like a budget. You have what's called a top sheet that breaks down all the major expenses on a budget.
Yeah.
What if they don't have scripts? They don't know, like, how many times are we going to shoot in this location? Are we going to block
like chicken
shoot
and
here?
egg thing, right?
Like how many? If we're going to get cars from that rental place, how many cars are we going to need? When you break down a script, I mean, this is not rocket science. They've been budgeting and breaking down scripts for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And all this talk about what it was 100% over budget, the entire show,
it's impossible.
Well, then, if the show is over budget, then you must have seen all the scripts. And if you saw the scripts, pay the writers. It's so bizarre to me when I read this article. I mean, I think underneath, it seems to me like
it almost comes off like a bad joke. You're right. Like it's like a chicken and egg thing. It's like, how do you know what the budgets are when you don't have finished scripts?
Do we know anything about the? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask, do we know anything about the individual people at A24 that were in charge of this and what their track records are individually? Because that usually seems to be the
Young, and we've got he's named in this, and who was the other one that was named? The one who actually fired Fuller and
yeah, because I remember from learning from Midnight's Edge documentaries that it always comes down to like the individual personalities of the people involved in these things, and I'm just wondering if there's if there was some foreshadowing or something with someone being put in charge of this.
There's a really great bit of this article that cracks me up. According to several Crystal Lake team members, the A24 executives were unaware of exactly how a television show operated. One often repeated story involves Inman Young. When the plan was introduced to shoot the show in multiple units, with a main unit, a second unit, and a splinter unit, Young asked if A24 would have to hire 2 of every department head. TV normally works with single department heads whose work filters into every unit, with one art director providing the art direction for the entire show, etc. And I can see that happening. Yeah. I can also see it happening when they start talking about block shooting and of course that you have multiple episodes. So you need to wrap your head around the fact that, okay, you've got 8 episodes and 6 of those episodes use a certain location. We're going to shoot all of those scenes. I mean, that can be difficult when it comes to casting and all that, but we're going to shoot all the scenes in these 2 episodes or these 3 episodes at a time. So then you have to wrap your head around block shooting across multiple scripts. And that gets confusing. But that's why they pay TV and movie people the big bucks. I'll tell you something. I've often said that I kind of wish that all the problems of the world were thrown to a movie crew. That because there's no better group of people to solve problems than a crew on a movie, because every single dollar when you're in production every single minute has a dollar value associated with it. And if you're working on a project where every second might be costing you $30, which is not out of the realm of possibility, you better believe the people that are working on that project know how to solve problems very fast, because it adds up. Every second, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30. And people especially studios, get upset when their money is not being spent effectively.
Yep. Not only that, when it comes to television shows, they have what's called the family tree package, which basically means you have your showrunner essentially at the top, and then all the department heads are underneath them, and then all of them have their crew and team. And when you're doing something in the block shooting, not only do here's the thing, you have multiple crews mixed and matched for episodes that are done by different directors. So if you have a James Burrows, like on Cheers, he had the same crew, same director. He directed the majority of the episodes. They knew what was going on. It was autopilot by the time they got to the second season. Then if you have something that's an 8-episode series and you have, say, 4 directors, and each director is doing 2 episodes, you then have to plan for that. And then you also have to make sure that the crew is allocated for that. So you can double dip, where you can actually have 2 shows being in production at the exact same time with 2 separate crews that are working together. But that actually also screws around with how you organize your cast, because you then have to do micromanage scheduling. And that's why they don't do that. They tried doing that in the early 2000s, I remember. And it just was a nightmare, because they'd be like, well, we have this one actor who's doing episode 3 right now. We across the lot, we're doing episode 6. Same actor's in there. If he wraps at 2:00, we're going to get him over there for 2:15, failing to realize that it's not a 15-minute drive from set A to set B. And even then, you're never 100% going to make your end time at that point, because if the director's like, well, maybe we have to do another shot for safety or not additional coverage, we still need this actor in here. Maybe the actor screwed up their line once or twice, or there's a laughing fit that caused delays. Those things have to be taken into account. And so that's why they do the block shooting in the way they do. So if they're going to do something where, okay, we're going to do an exterior shot here with Pamela Voorhees and whatever characters on the street with these vintage cars, this director, it's going to be episode 2. We have to make sure, okay, not only do we have to get that coverage for the day, but all the other stuff that's happening on the subsequent episodes, we have to basically allocate it to 1 day per episode. And then whatever staging we have on those parts has to be done on the turnaround once we wrap the actors. So you basically are looking at like a 24-hour operation where you have different crews coming in on 8 to 12-hour shifts so that you are not losing a single second of time on the conversion. And that means that you have, okay, well, we're doing a night shoot for any of these scenes. If we are, then as soon as day shoot wraps, we got the night crew coming in with that second episode for the night shots. And it just has to keep going smoothly. And you've got maybe, if you're lucky, 10 to 45 minutes of a shift huddle between the crews of what they did, what camera equipment's going on, batteries that need to be changed, grips, updating what has to be restructured, removed, what have you. They're very, very good at this stuff. It's so amazing to see. But when right before you get to that point, it looks like a nightmare.
Right.
Well, and I'm reading through this again here, and we do have. I must have forgot this part because we were talking about the budgets. Evidently, there was a budget put together because the Wrap viewed it, compiled roughly a month before Crystal Lake was shut down. That shows the series was roughly over budget by about $4 to $6 million. So that's 100% over budget, Robert. That's what they're considering. So only $4 to $6 million is what they say the show was over budget,
which is the exchange rate. It could be the exchange rate,
exactly. And then how the fuck do they know that if they don't have finished script?
Well,
everything that A24 is saying is bullshit, and we've got proof already.
No, because here's the thing. But theoretically, look, when I talk about you need a script to budget something out, that's true to get an entire budget. But if you're going to make 8 episodes of a show, and you have $85 million, you can back into your numbers, even if A24 takes out 20% of that. Mm-hmm. So you know what you have left to make shows. And they also, they're not, so you're not dealing with the actual nitty gritty, but you're going, okay, each of our shows, each of our episodes, we have $6.5 million to make them. You can break it down that way. But that's when you get into the nitty gritty, like how many cars do you have to see on the street? Right. That's when you deal with everything that's going on. But you can have an overall budget to make theoretically the 8 episodes, but where you really start saving money and what you're doing is, it becomes a nickel and dime issue where you can really start saving money. And they knew what they wanted to get on a macro level because they had the number, they had the 85 million and they're backing into it. But on the micro level, on the detail level, that's where the rubber meets the road. And you really start dialing in how much each episode's going to cost and how can we save money here? How can we have more money allocated over there? And that's when the real budgeting takes place. But I'm sure there was a macro budget and they're looking at it going, well, how can we take $50,000 more or $100,000 or even, $2 million more for A24? To me, that's what I'm getting a vibe just from this article that A24 wanted to pocket a certain amount of cash, and they felt that with Brian Fuller and his team in charge, they weren't going to be able to pocket as much as they wanted to pocket.
Because the more I'm seeing in this, it's like and putting it together with what we've been speculating, what you guys know, it's like they were, and Brian and them guys even saying here, somebody said on Brian's behalf that it never felt like A24 wanted to make the show with them. Like they put them in as far as they knew, they were working on everything they needed to do. And A24's even started pointing the finger at Peacock, going along with what Price was saying. But Peacock denied most of this shit from what they said here. But otherwise, they didn't get any comments from A24. So all this is just speculation. And it sounds like a lot of he said, she said crap. But as I was saying before, Brian is the one with the receipts so far.
Right.
And I don't get where A24 is coming from, other than I said, this sounds like they're trying to pocket a bunch of this money, or they already spent a bunch of this money, and they know damn well they have to deliver a show. And maybe somebody at A24 is cozy with somebody in the higher echelon up at Universal or whatever, that they're, because supposedly they're on, the order came down from high above in Universal. So that might be another reason why Price was saying what he was saying here. But none of this makes sense, other than if A24 is trying to cover their tracks because they want to keep a bunch of this money.
There's one more scenario. Again, without knowing what's going on behind the scenes, we don't know for sure. But theoretically, let's say NBC, Universal, Peacock, whatever it is, they've spent money on those Exorcist things or whatever. They thought that it didn't go well. Maybe somebody's sitting there and saying, aren't we spending too much money?
Well, that was Blumhouse, but yeah.
Never mind. They're saying, aren't we spending too much money on this horror thing? Maybe we don't need to spend so much money here. Maybe this isn't a good project. And then they go to A24. They tell them, listen, make this project go away. You guys can keep the money that we gave you. We're just going to apply it to a different show. And we'll do something else. And let's just steer away from this. Our creatives feel like we don't need to do this now. Now, this sounds like weird to you, but it is theoretically possible. And then at that point, they're just throwing Brian Fuller under the bus, trying to get rid of it. And like I said, either they're going to find a cheap guy to do it, which means that NBC Universal really wanted it and they spent the money like you guys said, or they never make this show and suddenly you see NBC and A24 making something completely different suddenly. I think that'll be, you know, the proof that they worked out some other wheeling and dealing behind the scenes.
Well, then that would allow for NBC Universal to essentially write off that production because it was designated for streaming, it doesn't have pre-sale numbers, which means that they can actually get a tax write-off on it. But then the other part too, and the, you know, especially with the WGA involved, if NBC and A24 were to do that, that qualifies as collusion or conspiracy and money laundering.
Right.
Because
and that's the other thing. Yeah.
And you think that that's never happened in entertainment?
Oh, no, I'm not saying that, but
have you heard of Canon Films?
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, but those days are yeah.
Those days are very different.
That we're talking the mob and shit and that involvement. But yeah,
the difference is that you're getting the government now involved.
All right. That was an extreme example, but I'm saying
I'm kind of on the same page as you, Price, and I see where you're coming from, especially if A24 or if Peacock turns around and just taxes rights off this bitch. Then you're probably right. There's somebody up above saying, yeah, we've spent too much money on this. Because I doubt they got the whole $85 million check up front, right? Script,
no,
Robert?
they didn't get it.
That's basically how this works.
Allocated, and then they would get it would be some sort of payment program or disbursement that would be done.
So they've got X amount to get things rolling, but not the whole. And that's the other thing, because there's even the bit about the $300,000 that's been spent on the production facility. They don't even know where the fuck's at. Like, that sounds to me like you got some cocaine problems going on in your home.
Well, I mean, heck, cocaine problems were one of the factors that prevented Hannibal from getting that next season, because I got a call. I was in the props department. I got a call from one of the places we rented furniture from. And they said, we found what we think is coke and a needle and a spoon in one of the desks we rented you. Is that yours? And I'm looking at the prop list. I'm like, well, we don't have that on our prop.
Was Hunter Biden visiting the set that day?
Oh, no, but like, I mean, kind of facetious, but no, I'm serious. Like, you've got so much money rolling around where you don't even know what's going where, and you're just trying to cover up shit that's going in your pocket. And I'm not trying to say that A24 is into some nefarious shit here, but they might be. But at the same time, I think it's more of this might be a situation where this is more money than they've ever had in their life to deal with. Because going through this again, too, I'm also seeing where I think the executives are under the impression that this show should only cost like $1 million an episode.
That's what I was wondering, right? Because I know you can't say everything about what you've read and what you know, but in my mind's eye, I'm thinking this shouldn't be an expensive show. This shouldn't be full of
and no
special effects. This should be people talking in a room. You know,
well, and this is where I think A24 has the problem. And I wonder if Robert, sorry, I just want to say, I think the problem is that a lot of the money is going to go towards the talent behind the show, right, Robert? That's kind of the thing.
Yeah, but there's still, I mean, I can tell you, there's in the first 10 pages, there's a giant bear attack. There's underwater photography involved.
Okay, so that's what I was wondering. So I'm like,
it's
are the scripts calling for what should be expensive, or is this a really intimate kind of thing?
It's an ambitious show. The same way, I mean, I would expect. Look, Hannibal took place in rooms and outside, but it had some amazing effects work and amazing cinematography and amazing. I would imagine that this Friday the 13th. I mean, the real sad part about all of this is that Brian Fuller is probably the world's, in terms of people working in this industry, he's probably the biggest Friday the 13th fan in the world that works in the industry. And what I care about is I'm always talking about authorship and people that, I mean, this is a dream for him. Like it's his life's ambition to make this show an amazing show. And what I look, if they already greenlit an $85 million show, I think it's in A24's best interests that are all about their creativity. I think we're seeing A24 is now, it's now who's more important, the creators or the people at A24 themselves. And I'll tell you something. I'm not going to mention who or what I know and why I know this on a completely unrelated A24 project. A completely unrelated A24 project. I know somebody who worked on it and said the executives and people that work at A24 are completely full of themselves. They think that they're like the most amazing people in the world. And I think that they have a tendency because of, I mean, what other company has fan clubs and people that run around and only see A24? I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I have some great A24 physical media I love since they're stopped making Suns Disc, their Pi Disc. They're doing some great stuff. But the people that work at A24 think that they are better than the creators of the properties they're making. And that's
I think
the
that's
problem
showing through here, and I think you're right.
That becomes a huge problem. The executive class in the entertainment business knows less about actually making the stuff. They know less about making the sausage than they ever have. And I think A24 is a perfect example of a very cool company, and everybody works there, I'm sure, is very cool. But you still, the way things are made hasn't really changed in 100 years.
Right.
And I know everybody wants.
Their networking to get deals is really impressive. Like I think that's where the ego comes from, is that they know how to make the deals, but they don't know how to make the product. They're the
because they're cool. They're the coolest studio in Hollywood right now.
Yep.
Well, we got Shanatsky here who says with $2 they need to start suing these producers for fraud. Well, I don't know if it'll get that far, Shanatsky. I think that the guild will probably be able to handle it. At least that's why I was asking Script.
The guild will handle it, but if there's a tax write-off and you're going, basically, if you get the government involved, then that's where fraud is going to be exposed at this point. I don't think the studios are arrogant enough to go to that level.
Fortunately, they have, and this is what I was saying before about greed, right? It's like, yes, they have the right to take this amount of the money right up front as their cost of doing business for overhead and all the other stuff that Robert and Script were explaining before too. But I think at this point, taking half of the production cost or whatever they're doing now it's getting too insane. It's like, you do know you need to produce a show, right? Like it's not just you know.
It reminds me of Mel Brooks as the producers to some extent. Which will come up later. If we make a flop, we keep all the money,
right? Well, actually, you know what? Who this also, this reminds me of more so, and I know Robert will definitely chime in on this one. Full Moon and what
Charlie? Oh yeah, having worked there,
you know exactly. I've heard some of the horror stories, Robert, where Charlie is notorious for this. He's like, we got X amount, but you're only getting this much to make the movie. Go.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah. Charlie was a master of it. I mean, this kind of business has been done for a long time in Hollywood, but at the end of the day, you still have to make. I mean, in this era of peak TV,
and he's competing with some big shows. Exactly. You're right. And not only that, this is a follow-up to like Hannibal in that respect, though. So it's got to live up to that.
Yep.
For Brian.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. And it was going, and the thing is, based on the scripts, it was absolutely going to. And at the end of the day, I would say, settle your differences, pay your writers, and go make the show you were going to make in the first place. Just go do it.
Yeah.
Let bygones be bygones and go do it, because the quality of the scripts is there.
Well, not only that, A24 is shooting themselves in the foot because they most likely have a 20% revenue participation deal in place with this show with Peacock. So if it drives subscribers and it drives ad-supported views, they get one hell of a great deal of piece out of that.
Well, you know what else this drives? Merchandising. Mm-hmm. Jason's a big merchandising.
And I would say that, as I said, this show would elevate the entire franchise to another level. And it would just anytime something comes out that's part of a venerable IP that turns out to be great, it ups the value of the entire IP. I mean, whether or not you loved Creed, I thought Creed was a pretty respectable entry into the Rocky franchise, and it's led to three films.
I like Creed too, but
they're going to make.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to make a fourth one.
Yeah.
Is that the better strategy for classic IPs now, rather than doing reboots or sequels? Is to try to find the spaces
Cobra
in
Kai
between?
route,
Yeah, well,
there's-
I'm not. Well, the Cobra Kai route's kind of a sequel, but I mean, I'm talking about like
Yeah,
there's sort of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead in between the scenes kind of stuff to enrich what is already there rather than adding on to it.
I don't know. I
way.
said earlier I'm not a fan of those usually, but this is one of the few times where I could see it could work. But I'm curious what you guys think, because I'm just not a fan of prequels in general. But this is a little different in my opinion, because there's a lot of stuff that is hinted at, talked about, has never really been covered in the Friday the 13th universe that is ripe for the picking. Like I said, we have no idea for sure, depending on which canon you go by, who Jason's father is, how he was born, or who his real father is, the stuff that his mother supposedly did before all this stuff. I'm curious what the red look. She could have killed a bunch more people on that night at the camp that we don't know about, right?
Right.
There's all kinds of stuff that you could do. Like here, there's all sorts. She poisoned the lake at one point. And this is just brushed over and talked about in the first movie. It's like, okay, we could see some of that stuff. That could be interesting to see how this all came about. And again, we don't have the big answer as to who Jason's father is unless you go by certain canons, because it's either Elias or his father is also his grandfather, and his stepdad is Elias, and he was also abusive. And there's also, does he have a brother or sister, which depending on which canon you go by, there's that business too to go in there with it. So there's all kinds of ground that can be played with here compared to some of the other franchises. Like, I wouldn't do this to Freddy necessarily.
No, because
I think there's
well,
like
the thing is,
one story maybe there, and that's it. And that's just the story of how he got caught. We already know that basically, but yeah, go ahead, script.
well, but saying like this is one of the things that I really appreciated with Hannibal is that it wasn't so much of a prequel; it was a companion piece, and that's what Camp Crystal Lake is. It's a companion piece. This was something like back in 2014. I pitched a companion show for Lethal Weapon, which ended up getting done by Fox by some jerk off that really ruined it. But the whole idea is like you just want to have a buddy cop comedy that is interwoven between the films. It sets up or builds up or leads up towards the film so that you could watch the TV show, go watch the movie, come back to the TV show, follow that show. It's not overwriting canon or anything of that nature. It's just trying to complement it so that you as an audience member can have fun and see these characters in more adventures. What ends up always usually happening is that someone gets involved and says, oh, this is a really good idea and it's part of an existing IP, but I really don't want it to be so codependent on the existing IP that we are exploiting. We want more of that pie for ourselves. So we're just going to make it our own thing and kind of distance it from the very thing that made it popular in the first place. And we're just going to keep all the money, or we're not going to do it at all. And we're just going to keep the production stuff and just hold on to it so that we can maybe either flip the rights for a higher value because someone's going to be more desperate to have it than we were. And I mean, we got that with Rush Hour. We got that with the Lethal Weapon show. They made the attempt with Clarice, which again was one of the worst pilots I have ever read, and I'm still holding that worse than the stuff from Disney Star Wars.
And that was just a big fuck you by Kurtzman and company to Brian Fuller.
Yes,
which made no sense. Yeah.
And what's ironic is that I had looked at Camp Crystal Lake as the FU back to them.
Right.
But unfortunately, it sounds like Fuller's going to get fucked again unless hopefully the guild will come in and get him paid at least. But at the end of the day, I think at this point, unless some miracle happens, the show is not going to be produced by him at the end of the day.
Which is the damn shame of it all.
Right.
Well,
because
the most
as a
frustrating
big fan,
part to me.
I love his work. One of the few guys I would love to step out of the way and go.
Yeah, it's like I love his work. He's not getting any younger. I want to see his work make it to air, and I want to be able to enjoy it while he's still around. Frankly, I don't want to see another couple of projects fail, and suddenly he's 10 years older. He's in his 50s now. I feel like not that he hasn't done anything, but I feel like we're losing time with a really amazing creative mind.
Well, CCU said here in your super chat, can I get a Fuller show that makes it to air? Yeah, that to me is the bigger issue here. Is this guy is a veteran. We brought it up, and that's probably where a lot of these guys are lost because they have no idea what he's doing or talking about because he actually knows what he's doing. And at the end of the day, the receipts are going to show that he did know what he was doing. Sadly, we'll never get the show. The show will probably be made by some idiot who has very little care for the franchise, who's just going to come in and do it for the budgets that A24 wants it to so they can have their bonuses. And that's really what it's about at the end of the day, sadly, I think. I don't think A24, if A24 really cared about the quality, I think they would sacrifice whatever it is that their problems are here. Like you just said, Robert, let bygones be bygones, put this shit aside. Say, look, we want a good quality show. This is the guy that's going to deliver it. And this is how he's going to deliver it by all the things that you've been telling me. Is like, as a fan, as a super fan of the Friday the 13th franchise, I'm like, I want to see it. I want to see what this is. This has me interested, especially considering I've been waiting this long for another installment, because I did not like the remake. Most of us did not like the remake. It was horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was,
I mean, you know what? I still think the original is my favorite. It's not like it's high art, you know.
No,
but
and we
still.
get that. But Brian
The first
Fuller
one is
coming
the
to the
best.
table is like, yeah, you're like saying, well, what if we get some? Well, you got the guy who did Hannibal doing the show.
Yep.
Okay, I'm listening.
Yep.
You know, like, like that's a
100%.
big deal. And they're treating it like it's like, and then that's the other thing. I don't know how much A24 spent on getting these rights too. That's my other question, because I know this was also a big deal that went back and forth for a while, and there was a bidding war. And I have no idea. I'd have to go back and look at I can't remember what it was reported that they spent on that too. So I'm sure that might be added into this $85 million that they that's why they're trying to cut the budgets too. I mean, to be fair to A24, but at the end of the day, that's the cost of doing business, A24, not to turn it back around on yourselves. Like, you get to amortize that into the cost of making shirts and figures and masks and stuff like that. That's
and talking about an after shows. I mean, someone's going to do an after show of Camp Crystal Lake. They're going to be
yeah.
that for dirt cheap, but they'll make tons of money off of it. I mean, like the after shows for The Walking Dead and those made bank. And they were nothing to produce. Absolutely nothing. It was just, hey, fans, you just saw that episode. We are going to talk about that episode. We're going to give you some little tidbits of what we think is going to come in the subsequent one. Come watch us for a half hour, 45 minutes. Do that. I mean, there's so many tiers of amortization that you can do with these types of shows when you have this level of pedigree behind it. And that's the other part too, is like, this would have been your pioneer show with regards to, oh, this is the new landscape of TV writing right now. Here we go. Let's usher it in. Let's see how it's under the old model of 8 episodes for a season, but you don't know how popular it could be. You don't know whether or not A24 and Peacock says, you know what, Brian, we don't think 8 episodes a season is enough. We're going to allocate you some more money. Take it as far as you can.
Yeah, no hope there. But G-Dog sends us in a super sticker. Let me see if I can see what this is here real quick.
Thumbs up, I think.
I think it is a thumbs up. If it is, either way, hit that thumbs up if you haven't already, and it is. Thank you, G-Dog. We got Dash Attack, who says the Friday the 13th prequel series could have been great. So disappointed. No chance to salvage. Oh, there's a chance, but I doubt it with Brian at this point, unless there's some miracle, like we were saying before. But the way they were treated on this sounds really bad. I mean, I don't know if you can speak to that at all, Robert. But
well, I think that it is. I think they, you know, as all creators do, they want to make the shows they want to make. I mean, there's a lot of heart and soul put into this already. And I think that they would love to see nothing more than this happening. I mean, but I don't want to speak for anybody, but I just know that for anybody that's working on a show that, you know, is a fan of something, they're putting their heart and soul into this. And it just seems so needless. I wish it would have. Look, I want to see the material I read. That's what I want to see.
I want to check. I would love to be able to check that out myself. But
I have to say, I really enjoyed the first season of American Gods, and that show, after Brian left, it was not the same. And I was really bummed out about that because I'm a huge Neil Gaiman fan.
We got Grahamcast with $4.99 says, "Hear me out. A movie about Jason, but not Jason, or not just Jason. Sorry. What if he fought against a different '80s icon? Maybe the principal from Ferris Bueller."
Yeah, Jeffrey Jones, I'm sure.
Well, isn't that kind of already Freddy versus Jason in a way? You got to go deep for that joke.
Yeah.
Deep for that joke.
But I mean, they're both hunters, which is actually kind of funny.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to get into why that joke works, but if you get it, you get it. Mexican Iron Man is in the house. How you doing, Mikey? He's not on the panel, but he's in the chat. And he says, how come that the only people that make money off these budgets and get paid are the a-hole dumb nut execs that never give fans what they want? From A24 to Paramount to Kathleen Kennedy, all morons. Yeah. Well, I mean, again, they're not seeing the bigger picture. I think Robert, especially when it comes to A24, I mean, maybe some of their hubris is getting in the way. I think you brought that up a little bit before. And yeah, it's just kind of sad that we've gotten to that point with some of these production companies. But I didn't know how much more time you had, Robert, but we do have one more story to talk about. I don't know if you're going to be interested in Spaceballs or not, but
sure, why not?
Yeah, so I'll give you the final thoughts on this. Yeah, I'll give you the final thoughts on this Friday the 13th story before we move to that.
Well, look, I mean, again, I think I've always been interested in great stories well told. And to me, when I see passionate creators like Brian Fuller, who's going to make it part of his life's work to make this the greatest Friday the 13th TV show that ever was, bringing a level of creativity and nightmarish horror the same way he did to Hannibal, we're going to get something that is unexpected, probably plumbs the depths of real darkness, and is way better than we probably deserve. And it's look, I don't have any particular love. I mean, I saw the Friday the 13th movies. I own the Scream Factory box set. I like the Friday the 13th movies. They put a smile on my face. You know, I bought this Friday the 13th 4K steelbook of the original film just because. But I don't think that Friday the 13th is on the level of another Paramount property like The Godfather.
Oh, no,
but I think that Brian Fuller would have found a happy medium somewhere between The Godfather and the original Friday the 13th. He would have given us something unexpected and quite frankly amazing, that would have honored everybody who's ever loved Friday the 13th and taken it into a bold new direction, not as a reinvention or a reimagining, but what he did with Hannibal. You know, no one would ever look at Hannibal and accuse it of being agenda driven, even though it serves all kinds of people's agendas. And you don't notice because it's so great. And I would love to have seen him do that with Friday the 13th. So this is deeply saddening to me. I want to see it made.
Well, if there's any more updates, we'll definitely have to have you back, and definitely I'll be picking your brain about it. But yeah,
you know, I would think the Friday the 13th TV show could be about the power of one, power of two.
Wow.
Machetes, basically.
Well, and Star Wars right now is ripe for parody, and you would think that this would be a good announcement. Exclusive Spaceballs sequel in the works at Amazon, MGM from Josh Gad and Mel Brooks. Actually, this is something that's kind of been speculated and rumored about for a few days, since Josh Gad posted a very cryptic message with a script with the title scribbled out and said characters created by Mel Brooks, and I can't remember the other writer of Spaceballs. So it was pretty obvious that he's working on a sequel of sorts to Spaceballs. So yeah, we don't really have a whole lot to go on with this, but yeah, so this came out with them, and then there was a write-up in Hollywood Reporter about it that may have a little bit more info, but we'll see here, because I just got sent this from 6 here not too long ago. The Schwartz is with Amazon MGM Studios, where a sequel to the 80s parody film Spaceballs is in early development. The Hollywood Reporter has confirmed Josh Gad and Mel Brooks are producing the project that has Gad attached to star.
Ugh.
So my guess is he's probably going to play the son of Dark Helmet.
Oh, I thought he was going to play the son of Barf.
Yeah,
maybe. I was going to say, you know why that is? Because he's also playing the son of Rick Moranis in that long-stalled Honey, I Shrunk the Kids reboot.
Oh, jeez.
Why are they getting him? The other actor who played his son in those first two movies is still around.
I know, and he played him twice already. I don't know why.
What is Josh Gad's? Why is Josh Gad a thing?
He started out as he was the star on the Broadway version of Book of Mormon, and then he got his big break in what was that cartoon, the Frozen one, as the voice of Olaf, the snowman, and then he was in the Beauty and the Beast as the gay
the
Gaston fan. Yeah, I remember the
the Gaston fan.
Oh, okay.
But so like and I would have a little bit more hope for this if it was 10 years ago. And we hadn't already gotten that god-awful History of the World Part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which come off more like Drunk History.
Yeah, when I saw this reported, I thought to myself, yeah, how much of a hand did Mel Brooks have in History of the World Part 2? He produced, but it didn't really...
Well, and you know what? There was a sequel to Spaceballs. It was an animated series for G4 Television, I believe.
That's right.
and it was horrible. The best episode was the first episode where it was a parody of episode 1, and that was it. Otherwise, it was a really bad show. But this is the other thing that has me kind of worried is the writers working on this are the ones that worked on Samet and Hernandez, who worked on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Mutant Mayhem, Pokemon, Detective Pikachu, Addams Family 2, and the forthcoming Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy special. So yeah, he just handed in the final script, according to this. I think maybe the funniest and best thing I've ever worked on. I'm so freaking excited, and this comes from that post that he made. So yeah, I'm gonna open up the floor to this. Who's looking forward to Spaceballs 2 to search for more money?
Even if you took out Josh Gad out of the equation, it doesn't feel like that movie that really needed a sequel. Yeah, I feel like it's something that was brilliantly done.
Half
as
the
a
cast is dead.
Well, that's true too. But even if they were alive, it stood so well on its own 2 feet. It doesn't need to be touched again.
The South Park guy should write this, not these guys. You need somebody who's got their thumb on the pulse of actual commentary and parody.
I would watch that too.
Yeah, if Mel Brooks are working together with South Park, that would be a Spaceballs I'd be willing to see, especially since they did such a great job on winnowing down Kathleen Kennedy to her base components. They know how they could take this and actually make a comment on not only the industry, Star Wars in general, but also just the current message of things. It would be great, but this won't be that.
Yeah, because I would love to see them do a streaming series joke that would be akin to the straight to video joke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, how are they streaming this? We're still making it. But it's the
great,
same
there's
joke
an ad
all over
now.
again.
Oh wait, Mr. Coffee 2.0. You know, like
yeah, where the movie actually stops for Mr. Coffee. Now that's taking it to the next level. But you're not going to get. I mean, maybe Josh Gad can get Rick Moranis involved. That's the only reason I can see this, because, like I said, that Honey I Shrunk the Kids reboot has seemingly stalled. I haven't heard any movement on it. Have you guys at all? Anybody script? Robert? Anybody?
No.
Because that was announced before Ghostbusters Afterlife even came out. And then the thing is they offered, and I don't know if you guys heard about this, they offered Rick Moranis more than what they paid everybody else to be in the goddamn movie, and he still turned it down for Ghostbusters 4, for the Frozen Empire one. They were trying desperately to get him in that movie, I guess. And he's like, no. And I guess he signed on to this Disney thing, and it still hasn't come to fruition yet. So I have no idea what is going on.
And I don't care
here.
about it either. To be honest, who cares about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? That was just the thing of its time. It's not some classic. It's not like Ghostbusters. It's not like... And Spaceballs, there's no way to make a sequel to it. It's just like Mel Brooks tried to do something, History of the World
Part 2.
Yeah, Part 2. And that was also some dumb crap.
Really
it's unnecessary. There's no point in doing this.
Well, and Mel has this perfect trilogy, right? He has, Blazing Saddles, which took on the Western. He has Young Frankenstein, which took on the horror film. And he has Spaceballs, which took on the sci-fi film.
History of the World is also great.
Well, they're all great. He's got a bunch of, varying levels, but he's got those 3 films to me are his trilogy, right? The trilogy of the parody, taking on Hollywood directly. I mean, you could throw in their silent film and a few other ones maybe, but that one I don't think.
High Anxiety.
High Anxiety is another good
Producers
example.
is good.
But yeah, they're all good, but he'll flat out say those are his 3 biggest sellers, because this is actually his biggest seller, believe it or not, on home video. Above and beyond all the rest. For some reason, he goes, you'd think it'd be Blazing Saddles, but no, it's Spaceballs. The kids love the Spaceballs.
It's a fun movie.
Well, and I think it's this generation, right? It's our generation's thing. That was the one thing that he did. If it wasn't for Spaceballs, I don't think Mel Brooks would mean shit to our generation. I mean,
you're probably right. It was because of this movie that I started watching his other movies.
Because I got it, introduced through Mel Brooks through this film, because I was already I saw Blazing Saddles and stuff like that on television as a kid, but it didn't really register or resonate with me until after this. Because Star Wars was something I was into, right? And later on in life, yes, I celebrate his catalog from his best to his worst, even down to Dracula Dead and Loving Him.
Also, I think that Spaceballs has the most cohesive story. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for. It's not
No,
the other
that
ones
works.
don't have a story, but they almost don't take themselves seriously at different points. Whereas Spaceballs legitimately has an adventure story within the parody.
You're not wrong, because if Andre was still here, because he actually popped in before the show to say hi to Robert and stuff, but he had to check out because it's really late where he's at. But he flat out says this all the time. This is his Star Wars, because he saw this before Star Wars.
Yeah, I remember.
So to him, he took this seriously to a point, even though it was goofy and funny. He didn't see it as the parody that we do, because he didn't see Star Wars until he was already like a teenager. He saw this as a kid. So to him, this was his Star Wars.
You may correct me on this, but I think even George Lucas, when he saw the movie, told him something along the lines that if it wasn't a parody, the writing actually was something that George liked. He liked.
I think he said it was too good or something like that at one point. But yeah.
Well, it's a simple story. It's go steal the air from another planet because we wasted hours. And then what happens later? Well, Rogue One copies literally Druidia with a big dome around a planet that's hosting the files.
1-800 Druidia.
Was it true that Lucas asked that the hero not look exactly like Han Solo, and instead, so as a joke, Mel Brooks made him look like Indiana Jones?
That's the rumor.
Yeah.
That is part of the rumor, yeah. And then the other thing is, like, there's so many things in this movie that I love that I just don't think it can be topped, right? Like, it is one of those films that is of its era, without John Candy, without half the other cast. That, like, I was only half joking when I said earlier, half the cast is dead, y'all. Like, I mean,
well, Bill Pullman's still alive.
Yeah, you got Bill Pullman and Daphne Zuniga, and then Rick Moranis. That's about it. Like,
Joan Rivers is dead.
Yeah.
Who?
Colonel Sanders passed away?
I think he did. Huh. I could be wrong, but if he didn't, I apologize. But I think he did not too long ago. And Mel Brooks is still alive. But other than that, like, yeah, and we don't know. He's on borrowed time.
As far as I know, like aside from Van Patten, it's like Joan Rivers and John
Dick
Candy.
Van Patten, John Candy, Joan Rivers, all gone. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, you can get away without some of them, and even some of the secondary characters like Dom DeLuise for Pizza the Hut. Even the guy who played Pizza the Hut inside the costume is like, anyway.
It's okay. He died in the first movie anyway, so.
Yeah, he did. He ate himself to death. Oh, you taste so good. Which is weird because that was real pizza. The guy almost burnt to death inside. He almost died making the movie. I don't know if you guys know that story or not.
Didn't they film it twice? They filmed it with one guy and then they had to film it again with a different guy?
Maybe because, well, the first time it set on fire, that's probably why. Because, like, it was like this screen, like, costume thing where it would, like, go over the guy and it was, like, being heated up like a filament, right? So then they would just keep blopping on the pizza toppings so they would stay bubbly and do all the stuff they're supposed to do. And at one point it started on fire and you could hear the guy going, help, 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 inside. Because, like, and then smoke started coming out of the fucking puppet and shit. And they're like, oh shit, he's burning up inside.
I just had a thought.
Caught fire, yeah.
Is Josh Gad going to play Kylo Rewind or something?
That's the thing. I have no idea. Yeah. I have a feeling he'd probably play like Dark Helmet's son or some shit.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they get Rick Moranis back. Maybe, but I doubt it.
Yeah, if they're just gonna like do a takeoff of the sequel movies or something, oh man.
Well, I'd be up for that if they were biting about it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing though. They have to work with some of the people that they're going to be making fun of.
Will
later
it work
after
though?
this.
Will it work though? Because here's the thing: the reason, and this is why I'm not so sure, because Mel Brooks has made this point time and time again. It's like, I don't hate these movies. I love them, or I wouldn't make fun of them, right? Like, because that's the whole thing. You have to love the Westerns to make something like Blazing Saddles. You have to love the classic Universal horror films to make something like Young Frankenstein, even though that's more of a Gene Wilder film.
That is fully Gene Wilder's script.
Yeah,
but
it
the
is.
other part too is I've read screenplays by people that hate certain genres that they're writing to make fun of, and they're terrible because the comedy's not there.
That's where you get another fucking franchise from.
I wouldn't want it to be spiteful.
That's what that not another fucking movie. Every one of those is.
Well, Not Another Teen Movie is actually a love
That was
letter
probably
to
one of
that.
the better ones, but
That is the better one. But like the stuff from Date Movie and
the superhero ones and some of the other ones are horrible.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
you can tell these people did not like these movies. That's why they're making this. And that's why Airplane works. That's why the true parodies work, because you can tell these guys were actually fans. They had seen these movies so many times that they could pick out all the little intricate things to make fun of, and that's why they work. And Spaceballs again works because Mel Brooks and the writers understood Star Wars and they understood Star Trek and sci-fi of that era, and they brilliantly brought it to the screen in this pretty basic hero story. Like you guys said, like you take the jokes out of it, it is a pretty basic hero's journey story, right? So, I mean, that's the part that works for it. It's the same thing with all the other movies we just mentioned, right? Frankenstein is basically a sequel to Frankenstein. Like, it's just funny. And Blazing Saddles is basically, every one of those Westerns where you had, the new sheriff come into town to clean up the town. It's the same kind of concept. It works because it's a real story. And I just don't know if they understood that now.
The sad truth about Mel Brooks is that he's a really good producer, but he's not the funniest one that he works with. Like a lot of the ideas and jokes he comes up with are not his. They are the people that he works with, that he kind of riffs with. I mean, his 2,000-year-old man stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like it's
that was
really
all
Paul
Reiner,
Reiner that's
wasn't it?
making that work. It's not Mel Brooks.
Well, and you can tell his writing, except for this film, with the writers that he had on this film, all of his other movies in this era, you can tell. And he even said it in an interview once. He's like, when I lost Gene, I lost a big part of myself, because when Gene went off to do his own stuff, and Gene's kind of the same, he lost a little bit of the edge that Mel brought to the table too.
Yeah.
Although Gene was probably the more talented of the two, because I mean, I just learned recently that not only I knew he wrote a bunch of the other movies that he's in, but I did not know that he rewrote "See No Evil, Hear No Evil" till the other day when I saw his documentary.
Oh yeah,
and he went in and he wrote Richard Pryor's part first.
Yeah. Like if you read Gene Wilder's books, you realize how brilliantly funny that guy was. And a lot of the jokes we associate with Mel Brooks from other movies, Mel Brooks just saying, man, Gene Wilder wrote it. Some of it worked in Young Frankenstein. Other parts we cut out of Young Frankenstein. I used it and saved it for another movie because it was too good to just pass up. Like the whole
only time
joke, that's Gene Wilder's joke.
Well, and the only time that he kind of did it was the producers was Mel's, because that was one where he pictured as soon as he met Gene, he's like, you're it, you're the guy, and he fought for him till the end and got him in there. And the other time was Blazing Saddles, because this is another thing I learned the other day, is that actually he wanted and wrote the part for John Wayne, and John Wayne loved the script. And he goes, I'll be the first one in line to buy a ticket, but this movie's too dirty for me. I can't do it.
Well, Andy Bergman wrote the first draft of Blazing Saddles, and I've heard from Alan Rickman before he passed away that it was that script was funnier than the final product that Mel Brooks sent.
Oh, I'm sure it was. Well, that's the version that I think Wayne read too. Was sorry, and as I say, I think that's the version Wayne read too, because that's what Mel said. He's like, it was chock full of Richard Pryor's N-word jokes. Of course, it was too dirty for John Wayne. Because Richard kept putting them in there.
Didn't they get another actor before Gene Wilder, and that actor was drunk, so Gene Wilder had to replace him?
He had a different actor that was basically playing like a John Wayne type, and then it just didn't work out because he was on the wagon, and then he ended up going into, what do you call it when an alcoholic has the withdrawals?
Gens tremens.
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, that. And so they actually had to put him in the hospital. So, yeah. So Gene Wilder at the last minute pulled out of another film to be in Blazing Saddles for him. But we are losing Robert here. Speaking of pulling out. Dude, I am so happy that you were able to make it today, because, yes, this has been an amazing ride talking to you about the Friday the 13th stuff. I want to get your impression real quick on, I know we talking Spaceballs for last few minutes, but we can talk about that forever because we love it. But, yeah. Anyway, what's your final thoughts on this, and tell us where we can find you, obviously your channel and all that stuff.
Well, I hope this gets worked out. I don't like to see, I think these situations are avoidable, and I never like to see this stuff happen. It seems to me so needless. It's so hard to get something made in the first place, that when you see this kind of impasse between a studio, the streamer paying for it, and the creatives, it seems needless to me. This didn't have to happen. They were on a good path. They had a good team. They have great scripts. They should have just went ahead and allowed it to occur. I read this article that we covered in the wrap. I don't see what the problem with A24 was. Like, where did they not know what they had? It's such a strange, and the writers certainly delivered.
Yep.
And I hate to see that happen. So hopefully it'll get resolved. In terms of where you can find me, you can always find me on my YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, or find me on Instagram at RMBurnett. And I will, we're launching our crowdfunding campaign on July 1st for our audio drama for True Noir, written by Max Allan Collins, who wrote Road to Perdition. And I will say this, when we start announcing who's actually in True Noir, people are going to be like, wait, what? Who?
He wrote Road to Perdition?
So it's probably real.
He wrote the graphic novel that Road to Perdition was based on.
Okay, yeah, because the movie was filmed a half hour away from me.
Yeah, it was written. They based it on Max's graphic novel, and then Max also had a show based on his series of novels about a character named Quarry that was made by Cinemax. So he wrote this. It's based on his 19 novel series about Detective Nathan Heller. It's basically, in a way, it takes place right after The Untouchables. Al Capone is in jail. Prohibition is ending, and it has to deal with the assassination of the Chicago mayor at the time. And the story is all based on real events. The detective is fictional, but all the other people surrounding him are not. And the cast is stacked with people that, let's just say, you'll know who all of them are and all of the places that they've appeared before. So I'm very excited to announce the cast. So by the time we launch the Kickstarter, we will be deep into post-production on the show.
Sounds
and
cool.
we're having a panel at Comic-Con on the 25th, Thursday the 25th, where we'll be announcing our cast. And you'll be able to probably hear the first episode. It'll drop that night.
Ooh,
so
wow. That's
yeah,
awesome.
I've already heard a clip that you shared, which was fantastic. So
it's so much. I mean, I was editing. I wish I could say the actor I was editing today, but you'll all know him. So yeah, it's good stuff, man.
Can't wait to find out who the cast is. It sounds fun.
It's pretty
All
good.
right, well, thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate your time, brother, and can't wait.
Thanks for having me, Tom, Scripty, and everybody.
Else,
it was good to stream with you all. I'm sure we'll do it again. And yeah, this has been great. I hope we did right by Brian Fuller and his incredible writing staff.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to him if he ever is open to talking to us about it. Definitely. I mean, obviously, it's easy to talk to you. So,
well, he's so busy on Dust Bunny, and then hopefully
I imagine
will happen. So
yeah, so he'll have to. If you hear any updates, you'll have to let me know. So yeah, that would be awesome.
100%.
Take care of yourself,
gentlemen. See you all later.
Have a great night, sir.
Take care.
Take care.
All right.
Now let's get back to these super chats here. We got Lost for Words, who's been a member for 28 months. Thank you for that. AF Watcher sent this in earlier. So says, so Capcom X-Men Punisher games confirmed connection. Is there a game out there that I'm connection
Punisher
to?
game? What?
I know the old game.
Yeah, I remember there's a Punisher game in 05 or 06 at Thomas
THQ that had Thomas James.
You have to clarify on that, AF Watcher. I saw that earlier. I was trying to decipher what you were getting at there. You don't have to send another super chat, just add us in the chat. Then we got Warrior Justice, who sends in 2 super chats in a row. Says, part 1. Hey everyone, and Tom, I got a story for you. My job was a feminist meeting. I went in and asked who was the man in charge, and they were pissed. I told him I couldn't hear them over the sound of them not doing the fucking dishes. I quickly left before they attacked me by if a woman gets by the way, if a woman gets a penis attached to her, is that an imitation meat? Maybe.
Oh.
I mean, they do have a meat locker after all. Willie the Monkey Music Man is here. How you doing, Willie? Who sends it to, and he says, I wish Mel could make a spoof of superhero movies. He'd have to like them.
Yeah.
See, and that's where I think it would work. And again, like Script and I are saying, Mel is good when he works with certain people, because Mel is the guy who can facilitate stuff, get shit done, get people. He's a great producer and director.
Yes.
Not the best writer.
No. Like he worked on the Get Smart series, and most of his ideas were actually terrible. Like he was just, but he knew how to get things from point A to point B. That's what he is. You know what's funny is that there's a lot of parallels between him and Kathleen Kennedy in regard to the producerial roles. Like he knew how to get things done. He knew how to get the best out of the people he worked with. Luckily for him, he's never been head of a studio, and he knows that's not his place. So that's where he actually is better. But I will say this: the most disappointing thing of his career is History of the World Part 2. It is
that's him cashing a check at this point.
It's him cashing a check, but at the same time, it's like he did not like if these were the best comedians he could get to help work for him. Comedy is dead. And I know
which is funny because I think he just said that, so it's like he's making this shit while he's admitting that comedy is dead. Script. That's the hilarity of it.
Mel Brooks and Brian Fuller should team up then. Have him produce. Have him write.
Well, I'll put it to you this way: the fact of the matter is, I know comedians that are actually really funny. I've read comedic scripts that are brilliant, and until Hollywood realizes that that's your domestic foundation for keeping your studios afloat, they're not going to be making any comedies. What we're going to be getting is more of that History of the World crap.
That's why I'm worried about fucking Spaceballs. Like I can't even get.
Should be. Josh Gad's not a comedian.
No, he's not, and he's not even a creative. Yeah. Where does he even think he's creative? I don't have any proof of that.
He's a character actor. He's good at doing roles, but he's not that. I mean, Justin Long is naturally funnier than Josh Gad, and he would make a great kid.
Who's the guy who used to write with or the guy who used to write with Seth Rogen all the fucking time? What's his name?
Adam Goldberg?
Yes.
Yeah, he's pretty
What's
good.
he been up to lately?
Well, he's been producing with Seth Rogen on a lot of stuff still. Like they're not writing, they're just producing.
Well, that's the only way I can think any of their earlier shit could be.
But I will say this: if you were to say Justin Long is going to play the Kylo Ren in a Spaceballs sequel series, I would laugh at that because Justin Long is a better looking Adam Driver. But no, yeah. I don't know what's going to happen with this. It's most likely going to be another disappointment. I doubt it's going to end up being a feature film. I would not be surprised if Amazon breaks it up to like a miniseries. But yeah,
they might be smart and make it a movie just because they know it'll sell a lot of videos, or they'll think it's going to sell a lot of videos. Anyway.
So, I mean that's the thing. Is like where's the where's the Dom DeLuise? Where's the Sid Caesars? Where are those guys that helped make History of the World Part 1?
Well, I think Scribe is right. The only way Spaceballs would work is if you get somebody of the caliber of like Trey Parker or even Seth MacFarlane. I'd hate to fucking say it.
I mean, are there any good comedic writers left? I mean, or that could operate. That could operate under this atmosphere and in this era. Yeah, maybe Mike Judge, but even then, you're kind of reaching.
Well, Mike Judge is able to get away with what he wants because number one, Paramount is desperate. Number two, he doesn't need the job.
Right.
Like that's his power right now.
Right.
There's a lot of comedic writers that you go to the Comedy Cellar. Most of them are not doing stand up, but they're doing sketches over there. Yeah. And they're really good. I've had some friends basically just like DM me little 10-minute clips of what they were doing down there, saying you should be here to watch this. It's hysterical. I'm watching it. And it is absolutely 100% funny, but there's just such an aversion to it because it doesn't sell internationally. And it's the dumbest argument right now. Like even myself, and even some of my friends, we have got comedic scripts that we have sent out that would really help the industry right now, and it's going to be up in the air. Where the best you could probably do is maybe get some attention on the contest circuit, which I hate because the contest circuit just helps you network, but you never really get a job out of it these days.
Well, that's kind of what got in the way of me becoming a writer because like I just was getting going, and it's like I had the plus of my writing partner being black, so he used that to his advantage as much as he could. But the closest we got was a horror script. They weren't interested in any comedies anymore.
No,
nothing funny. Like I had my story I've already pitched a few times. It's kind of like in the Stand By Me vein about the porn thing, right?
Right.
I could never sell that nowadays. Nobody want that. They wouldn't want any of the ideas I've come up with or anything that we've worked on or come up with here or anything beyond that. It's just no. And I honestly, Willie, I'd hate to say it. At best case scenario, if Mel did one, it would probably be like not another superhero movie, unfortunately, because he had a lot of the same people around him during that that was the last movie he directed was the Dracula one, and he had, I think, a couple of those people were around for that one that are along the same lines of the same people who took over that shit. And it's just like people who worked with like the Zucker brothers and shit. And I think one of the Zucker brothers, I think, produces them now or something like that.
Oh no, it was it's a pair of assistants for the Wayans brothers
that's what it is. Yeah.
Parlayed their stuff off. The Zuckers came in on Scary Movie 4 after the Wayans and everybody else left. Scary Movie 4 is quite funny.
3 and 4 were okay. 2 and 1 were the better ones, but
yeah, 2 and 1 were the better ones because they were not trying to do the Zucker movies, and that's why.
Yeah.
But the thing is, even the Zucker and Abrams guys, they to this day can't get a movie made, and they've got tons of them. Like even the Naked Gun stuff, it's not really with them in it. Like that Liam Neeson Naked Gun movie, that
has nothing to do with them.
Yeah, it's and the other part too is, will it have the gimmicks that are required? Like those guys, even though some of their dialogue jokes were lifted from other shows, their physical comedy and their plays with trick photography was 100% them, and it was brilliant. And I don't think there's many people that actually understand the mechanics of that and know how to use it for today's audience.
They don't have a gimmick. All they do is mimic.
Yeah.
And that's why I said earlier, everything is going to be just a redo or rehash of the first Spaceballs, for instance, and Spaceballs 2. Kind of like how Coming to America was nothing but greatest hits.
Yeah.
It's like that band that gets together and re-records all their greatest hits.
Yeah, and they're like, well, their voices are a lot older and they don't have the same range. And no, it's
not
or they don't
same.
Want to, or the studios don't want to shell out the money necessary.
Not
to actually
everybody's
get
the
talent.
fucking Eagles, right? Like there's only that rare occasion where the Eagles can come back and re-record all their songs. It's like, fuck, I didn't know Hotel California could sound better than the original. But
Don Henley really refined his voice. Look at that.
Well, it's just not only that, they just made it different and it had more flavor to it. And it was just that version to me now is the quintessential version as opposed to the original. And same thing with like Seven Bridges Road. Their live version is better than the album version. You don't get an Eagles in movies that often. It just doesn't work that way. Even Force Awakens proved that. You can't get the band back together and try to redo the same shit and it's not going to work. Right, even with new flavors involved there, with whatever flavor you consider Ray, but yeah.
Well, I think it's the same thing in music and film. If you have too big of an ego that you can't just try and be who you are today, you have to try and relive what you were 30 years ago.
And the sad part, is I don't think Mel has as big an ego as you'd think either. I think that's part of the problem. He's getting out of the way of these young guys.
He's like 1,000,000 years old. I think he's happy to be doing anything.
Exactly.
He is. The other part too is like he's also the type of guy that was trying to shepherd new comedians. I mean, he helped Dave Chappelle a lot. Like Dave Chappelle got his first break in Robin Hood Men in Tights, really. Like that's Mel Brooks helping
and that's
him out.
one of his last that's probably the last movie you could consider a Mel Brooks hit. And that wasn't even a hit in theaters, it was a hit later on video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was the thing.
He produced The Fly too with Goldblum, which is just always shocked the hell out of me.
He did The Fly. He did The Elephant Man. He did what else? There was a couple other ones I think he produced that had nothing to do with him. He just stayed hands off.
Yeah,
right?
He helped get the money so that they could make those movies, and
they're not a Mel Brooks movie, in other words. But at the same time, that's what I'm saying. He's the one who knows how to get out of the way of his ego. He is never one that I've ever seen in a way that, like, he even makes fun of his ego and like the fact that he doesn't really. I mean, he puts himself in multiple characters sometimes for that very fucking reason. Yeah. And then 9 times out of 10, it's just because somebody didn't work out, so he has to fill in for him. And it just so happens that he picks these. I think the only time that he ever casted himself directly in a role was as President Scroob, because it's literally his name backwards.
Yeah.
With flipping the S and the K. But like,
Can humility in producers work these days?
There are some producers that are humble, but it's to their detriment because they're usurped by the ones that are ego driven. Like the humble ones that know how to make a great movie, they are being ramrodded by ego driven producers that don't know what the hell they're doing.
The answer is no.
Which is kind of what we talked about with A24 and stuff.
Again, 20 years ago, they would have been challengers to like Joel Silver and all those guys. But today, just the way it's been corporatized to the point where it's not like, again, the business model is not about getting the money from the the people that go to the movie theater. It's kind of just about getting the money from the banks and the lines of credit and the tax credits and stuff like that. And to heck if it makes money on the distribution side of things. Like that's what's really kind of scary right now that I've been seeing.
There's
Well,
got to be more
Mel-
of a downside. There's got to be, I mean, moral hazard has to play a part in here somewhere where it's like you don't make money unless you actually make money. I don't understand this.
Well,
You know what's
I mean,
really
yeah.
sad? There's probably one guy who, if he decided to get into producing, could change the game, and that's Mel Gibson.
Well, he kind of already is, but he's doing his own thing, and they won't
Like
let
he's
him in.
directing and he's starring.
There's
like,
some movement supposedly on Lethal Weapon 5. Yeah.
Yeah, with him set to direct. I hope.
What did I say? What did I tell you guys? He was just finished. What did I say 2 weeks ago? I said he's just finishing up Passion. If we're going to hear something, it's going to be soon, right?
Yeah,
I made a poster
you're
for it
right,
already.
I just hope it happens. I really want it to happen.
Well, it's him and Lauren Schuler Donner are working on it. Because she owns half the rights, and Richard Donner bequeathed to Mel to do a fifth one if he wasn't alive to do it.
And I think enough people have, I don't know if he had anything in writing, but I think enough people verbally heard him say it that there's no denying it. Because, yeah, that's been out there for a while.
Yeah, I even think there's an interview of Richard Donner saying that.
I was going to say,
I don't let you do the fifth one. Mel will be the one to do it. That's the thing is like, it's kind of funny because there is a section of Hollywood kind of led by Disney that doesn't like Mel Gibson, but the rest of the industry still loves him, and he still knows how to make money. And
he actually,
I think he's like a Lethal Weapon 5 away from getting his way back into movies. But I mean, we got a little far from the mothership here. But no, I think you're right. Like Mel Brooks was the kind of producer, and I remember the story that he was telling about Gene once about Young Frankenstein. Because you're right, like he does not deny that Young Frankenstein is all Gene. Like even in the documentary, he's talking about how Gene brought it to him. He didn't even really want to do it at first, and then Gene convinced him to do it. And then he had to play producer. He was telling a story about having to play producer, and there was this one bit where they were trying to figure out justify spending. I can't remember what scene it was, but it was in Young Frankenstein. Maybe it was that one. I think you're right, because it was something to do with why do we need this scene with all these extras and all this other stuff. And Gene started telling him why, and he's like, "All right, that's enough. That's enough. I just wanted to see how hard you would fight for it."
It was the putting on the Ritz part was it was one extra day of shooting with that scene to do the gimmick, and Mel didn't want to do it for two reasons. Number one, it was too expensive. Number two, he didn't get the joke because he thought it was too contemporary, and Gene had to fight for it. And Mel acquiesced, but he still didn't like it. But when it was tested for the audience for the very first time, everybody just lost their minds laughing at it. And Mel was like, "Well, okay, you got it. It's going to be in the movie for certain. We're not cutting it out after that."
Right.
But yeah,
it was the justifying the extra day and the spending of money, because that's all he did. He just wanted to hear Gene's argument, and he didn't even get that far in the argument because he's like, "I was going to let him do it anyway. I just wanted to hear how much he really wanted to do it." Basically, is what he said, and what the deal was, and he had to explain it to me. He's like, as soon as he got it, he's like, "Okay, fine, you can do it," but I just wanted him to fight for it. That was the whole thing, right? Like and that's where he just had to kind of put the producer hat on, and he was going to let it go. But 9 times out of 10, that producer's serious, right? Like they're never going to let that argument go. So as a creative, you have to fight for that. And that's where Mel is great. Sorry, I don't mean to talk like he's in the past tense, because he doesn't really produce much anymore in that sense, but other than name only, it feels like, because he understood that there has to be a creative process here, and I got to get out of the way of it. Otherwise, magic can't happen. And that's the thing, is he's already had enough magic on the producers with Gene and, all his experience with, Blazing Saddles and stuff like that he knew to let Gene just fly with this whole thing and let him run with it. Like the mustache was another thing I remember he talked about. He had to argue it with him about. But again, it was just one of those things that I just wanted to see how much he'd fight for it. And then, of course, once we started seeing the dailies, I'm like, of course he has to have a mustache.
Well, I mean, a good producer will actually challenge the ideas to see how committed and useful the creative direction is. I mean, that's how you do that relationship. Like Gary Kurtz was brilliant at that with Star Wars, and not even like with him and Irvin Kershner, they were in lockstep on sync, which was amazing. But with him and George, it was like George was barely speaking for all of that, and Kurtzman would have to constantly, Gary Kurtz. Kurtz would have to constantly just push George to be like, "Hey, listen, we're not doing this." And George was like, "Well, we kind of have to." He's like, "Well, give me a reason." And George says, "Well, it's connected to this." Kurtz is like, "Great, this is how we're going to do it. Go." And then they did. You the relationships right now with producers these days is that it's not so much about challenging the idea of the writer, director, the whatever creative driving force is happening in there. Is basically just saying, no, you are under my boot because I'm the one that's facilitating this financially.
Yeah.
And that's why we're losing a whole lot of distinctive voices in a lot of our more mainstream films. I mean, again, to quote, Chris Gort film Threat, you get the more interesting films in the indie sphere. The problem is that it's the same metric of good to bad as it is in the mainstream Hollywood, where the thing is there's more independent films out each year. So the majority of them are bad, but every once in a while you get a really good one that stands out. And it's basically now a ticking clock. Is Hollywood going to snatch that person up and then completely break them down so that they cannot be the acclaimed creative that got them to that point in the first place?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Yes, and then we got Jeremiah Hembry, who sent in a member chat here for 15 months. It says, Tom, what I sent you on X, where I'm getting all these rumors at Reject Scooper. So let me check this out here, what you're talking about. Okay, so he got a scoop from Rejected Scooper that Secret Wars is supposed to have a Willem Dafoe in it. So I think he wants our opinion on that.
Green Goblin.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case.
It's just going to be Easter egg cameo city with that movie.
Yeah.
Well,
it's going to be the same roster what's in the comics. I mean, that's going to be sad.
As close as they can anyway, I guess.
Ew.
But they're going to try and, well, here's the thing. And this, I could believe this because with all the rumors that we're hearing that Feige's accepting that Marvel needs a revamp and needs fixing. They're going to try and lean into whatever was popular for a while. That's why Deadpool is a big deal to them right now. That's why I think they'll try to get back to Spider-Man No Way Home as much as possible, doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, Cameo City, especially if Deadpool's popular and as many cameos as we're hearing about that are being in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be surprised.
They need to zip up the multiverse thing. Just stop it.
Yeah.
Just
well, and I kind of was hoping that's what Deadpool was going to do, is kind of bring it all to a close.
Yeah.
Oh, if only. No, they're gonna try to recast Kang. They're gonna try to do this whole Secret Wars BS, and then they're gonna reboot it, and then it's gonna be all new, all different, all the way in Marvel.
It really is.
New
And the thing
52.
All new, all
Yeah,
different,
in
all
my
gay.
opinion right
You
now-
forgot that part.
In my
Yeah.
opinion, right now, they need to scrap Fantastic Four.
Yeah, no doubt.
should,
no
but
doubt.
You're
As
actually
it is, I
speaking
agree
script
with
and
you.
making
I mean,
sense.
to me,
Yep.
that could be the thing that'll fix some of the problems if they do it
They
right.
won't cancel it though. They'll never cancel it.
They
No,
won't.
No.
same thing
No.
with Blade.
Fantastic
Even
Four should be
though-
the start of a reboot of the franchise. I mean, they should
Did
go
you
back
guys
to
hear
basics.
the latest rumors about Blade? Even though I've been saying this for a while, that I
Oh,
think
yeah.
Rash Ali walked away. They were still saying, "Oh no, he's still attached to it." But his lawyer and
Oh.
some other people are out there saying some shit that makes me think that I don't know if he's so attached to it anymore.
No.
We'll
Rehire
see here in the
Snipes.
next few weeks. Well, what'd you say?
I said
Actually,
rehire Snipes.
rehiring Snipes would be the best thing they could do.
Speaking of that, did you guys see the other thing that came out? Was that supposedly they have Blade and Deadpool, but it's the TV version because
Oh God, I forgot.
Because Ryan
Spike
Reynolds
the old
is
Spike
bullshit
TV
with
show.
yeah, because Wesley
makes
Snipes and Ryan Reynolds hate each other.
Why
But
do
then,
they
you know
hate each
that's
other?
brilliant because that is right up the good poking fun at Marvel alley.
Yeah.
Get the TV Blade in the movie.
Oh my God, I forgot
It's
about
just
that
he's in the
show.
background
So
from
good.
one shot that I saw. I guess I don't know how real it is, but we'll see.
Wait, does Ryan Reynolds not like him because of that movie they did together?
Yeah, supposedly there's also look. Blade 3 is one of those movies that a documentary could probably be made about the making of that movie that'd be infinitely more interesting than the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you have a he said, she said thing behind the scenes going on between the director, Wesley Snipes, and the director is, of course, Mr.
David S.
Demonic Toys, David S. Goyer. And Ryan Reynolds has his side of the story, and what's her face has the
Jessica
other
Biel.
side of Jessica Biel has her side of the story. Everybody has their sides of the story of what happened. And to me, I feel like it was probably just because you didn't have a strong enough director. Because you have basically Wesley Snipes being Wesley Snipes when Wesley Snipes was at Wesley Snipes' height.
Yep.
And you have Ryan Reynolds, who is the new kid on the block, who's just coming off of the success of like Van Wilder and stuff like that.
Yep.
basically playing Deadpool, but not playing Deadpool.
I was about to say Blade Trinity was the first Deadpool movie.
Technically, yes. Like I can't even remember the character he plays now.
Hannibal King.
Hannibal King. It's like, yeah, he's playing Deadpool. It's Deadpool. And I don't even remember what Jessica Biel's I've literally seen this movie
Whisper's
once.
Daughter, I think, is that?
Yeah,
Whisper's
I
Daughter.
fucking
Yeah.
hated it. That's all I remember.
Whisper's
The
Daughter.
movie shows how bad David S. Goyer. It's like, if you need any more proof that David S. Goyer should be making a fucking movie than Blade, because Blade is one of the easiest. Because look, I haven't seen him in years, but all I remember about Blade is awesome. But then you got Guillermo del Toro coming in and saying, "Here, hold my fucking beer. Look what I can do." You know, like,
Yeah.
And Blade 2 to me is like even better than Blade 1. And I know some people don't feel that way, but oh, we lost somebody here.
Nick has to get ready for
Oh,
TP.
Nick had to get ready for oh yeah, shit, it's already that late. Fuck. So yeah, Toxic Tuesday is going to be starting off here in just a few minutes. They're going to be talking about Kickboxer tonight. So check that out. Thank you, Nick. Sorry we didn't get to plug it while you were here, but we always got Price to do that for us.
It's going to be huge and diabolical. We're going to be watching Kickboxer. You guys should show up right after Midnight's Edge After Dark, Toxic Tuesdays. I'll see you there.
Huge.
Huge.
Say, Jean-Claude will kick you in the boxers.
What?
Jean-Claude will kick you in the boxers. That's something that Nick would
kick you
say.
in the boxers.
There you go. Say, now he said nicely done. Say, yeah, it's diabolically huge. Jeremy Winfield, thank you for becoming a member. Let's see what level you joined at. It is a maximum effort, puppy. Thank you so much for that. You've got a video coming your way. We haven't done this one in a bit. Let's do this one. You know what? I'm going to surprise everyone.
Right! Benton!
You do this one.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
That's a maximum effort puppy.
Benton!
He's going after all the water dogs. He's like, fuck you, water dogs. I know people love that one. It's been a long time since we played that one. And we also had, holy crap, Wolverine Schnick, which is the sound effect that they make in the comic book. Snicked.
Yep.
When they come out, gifted 5 Midnight Says memberships. Holy crap. Thank you for that. I feel like I got to do something for that as well.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
We got an Oscar-winning puppy for you as well. There you go. And AF Watcher clarified that the Marvel vs. Capcom collection came out or just announced, and it's includes the Punisher arcade. So I can see. I think the arcade one-up has that as well. And Many Dragon also pointed out it's a collection of arcade games that was in Nintendo Direct today. So that was why I say it did drop today. So yes, I think I saw a cabinet that's going to have those as well. Don't quote me on that though. But yeah, so with that, I think we are all up to speed on everything. And this was a hell of a show. I want to thank everybody on the panel, especially for giving Robert leeway today, plus the excellent questions and topics and conversation we had in the process of. So Price, anything you want to plug? I know you got a show that you do with Script every Thursday. Is there anything else you want to plug besides that as well?
Yeah, tonight at 11:45 p.m. there's the Night Owl, and we're going to be doing it's with Dread Roberts, and we're going to be doing an immediate reaction to the Acolyte episode 4, like we have in the previous episodes, and that's on my live channel, Price of Reason Live.
Awesome. So Script, anything else to plug besides Scripts on Saturday?
No, I'm gonna go watch the Acolyte too.
Why?
Why?
Because I guest on Versus Mondays because they're doing an Acolyte follow up right now. So it's the work.
How to do it?
I'd do it. Don't want to disappoint them as much as I get disappointed by the Acolyte.
I'm hoping it falls off a cliff this week now that everybody's seen the train wreck.
It should. I mean, that's the statistics of how it goes. I mean, you know what the sad part is that it's still too early for me to call if it's worse than Ahsoka at this point. It's really hard. Like, because Ahsoka's terrible.
Ahsoka doesn't break canon as much, though.
I think it's worse than Ahsoka.
Well, you know what makes Ahsoka worse is that it actually
Mm.
is pulling from the Timothy Zahn series to pervert it into its own.
Well, yeah, in the most
And
cursory
Attack
way.
not
Yeah.
doing that yet. So that
I guess ruining Thrawn might be worse than ruining the Force in a way. So sure.
Well, I mean, they don't ruin the Force because again, it's a crazy coven of witches having their own
Right.
interpretation. Yeah, that's easily discarded. It's not the same as like Thrawn. He's in this
An
other
idiot.
galaxy,
Yeah.
and luckily there's this ancient orb that tells us how to get there. Like, what? How does that
Yeah.
correlate? So,
Yeah. With that, though, we also have CC. I know Fridays we do karaoke. Anything else?
That
you
is
wanna
correct. Friday night karaoke. That's what we do.
It's
Come
fun.
hang out. Yeah.
See me act like a fool.
And Price.
Yeah. Scribe.
That's
what
true.
you got coming up?
Let's see. Well, I just had a excellent panel discussion for my series called Living on Borrowed Crime, where I had several big YouTube true crime content creators on there at Misery Machine, Morbid Curiosity, Dave's Lemonade, and True Red Crime, talking about the line between telling the story and that story ending up in your real life in some way, shape, or form. It was a really great conversation. Looking forward to another one. Tomorrow, I'm going to do a Juneteenth stream going over reparations, because why not? With my friend Satsu 2 Cents. And then, as always, on Thursdays, I've got my series called TED Excellence at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, where I go over off-brand TED Talks for education and enlightenment. I'm eclectic.
There I
What can
go,
tell
being
you?
muted again. Sorry. I just turned Canadian there for a moment. Sorry. Abdulio sends in 10. How you doing, Abdulio? Says, imagine if Spaceballs 2 is done in the style of Tropic Thunder. It's about the making of Spaceballs 2, making fun of the behind the scenes of Disney and, with Bob and Kick-It. This could be brilliant if it was done right, but I don't think they're smart enough to do anything like this.
no, I don't even think they're smart enough to even have the joke that I did today on the fly of the Mr. Coffee streaming ad in their streaming.
Yeah.
Series. Like they're.
Yeah. The movie will be right back after this ad for Mr. Coffee.
Why don't we have a Mr. Coffee 2.0, Colonel Sanders?
Don't we own the company?
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, check out all these guys. I appreciate the time that they spend with me here, and also Robert for taking the time out of his busy day to come in and talk Friday the 13th with us. Even though it's not the most popular franchise in the world, it does have a pretty big following.
It's not even just that. It's also a great insight into the stupidity that certain studios are doing when it comes to potentially fantastic new content.
I mean, if you told me I had $85 million to make this show, even if you told me at the end of the day I was only going to get 60 of that, I think Brian would be happy with that, but he has to know that. That's the problem here. And I hope Brian gets his day here. I know it's not going to be a day in court, but it's kind of like that. You know what I mean? Like with the Writers Guild investigating and all that kind of business. It's going to come out. And I think A24 is going to have to write some checks. So,
you know, they may be thinking to themselves, they're going to end up writing checks, so they may as well now take a position that they're jerks, and at the end they'll settle for something that's better than what they're being asked to pay now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you did miss something, Scribe, on your poster. I'm pretty sure Chris Rock is supposed to be involved.
Oh, I was trying to think of other people from the previous movies that I could.
And it would be if you want to be like legit, it would be a Schuler Donner production, I believe.
Be a Schuler
with what was it, Elcon, or what is the name? Not Elcon. What's the name of Mel Gibson's company?
Oh God, I can't. Remember. Icon.
Yeah. That's it. Yes, thank you.
No, I did that. I did that real quick on the fly to get the joke in, so I didn't.
But yeah, no, just to show that we're not full of shit. Gibson even confirmed it here recently. That's the story that's been coming out. Yeah.
You know what the brilliant thing about the Lethal Weapon franchise is that not a single actor in that movie was ever recast.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, see now here they're saying that
alive came back.
Loyalty.
See, they're having issues here. It sounds like with Passion of the Christ, which I thought he was shooting. So.
I know he's up for a couple of other productions beforehand, because he's got a busy schedule right now. So I thought he would finish Passion too.
I'm going to direct a 5th film in the Lethal Weapon series. You know, Richard Donner, who did the other 4, sadly passed away, and he was a good friend. He kind of tasked me with carrying the flag home on this one, so it'll be an honor for me to do that. So basically, he's going to do whatever Richard had planned. Just
Yes.
yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Who do you think taught Mel Gibson how to direct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Richard
And he
Donner.
gone a fair way. Well, and they also did what was the other movie they did together? Conspiracy
Maverick.
Theory, wasn't it? Or
They did
and Maverick.
They did Maverick. They did Conspiracy Theory.
I think it was him, yeah, wasn't it? Donner?
Wait, no, I don't think Donner did Conspiracy Theory.
Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, maybe I was thinking of Maverick.
He definitely did Maverick.
Yeah, that's the other one I was thinking of for sure.
No, you're actually right. No, I just
I
checked right
thought
now.
so.
Donner
Yeah, I was gonna say they've worked a lot together. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're great friends.
So yeah, it sounds like maybe he'll just jump to that if this isn't working out with Passion. I thought he was shooting it already, because I thought the whole thing is that it was getting so big that he was gonna have to split it into 2 movies. That's the reports I was hearing. Huh. But according to this, on a recent interview on a podcast with Stephen Oxley, I don't think they would say this if he hadn't said it somewhere. Maybe I'll have to listen to the podcast, but yeah, because I'm curious about that. Huh. Interesting. Well, I know that's an indie production of his own, so it's hard to say, but yeah, I'll have to check into that some more. So that is happening, guys. We've been talking about it for some time. So
I'm looking forward to it.
And yep. So with that, kids, we're gonna get on out of here, and we're gonna send you over to Toxic Tuesday. They should be going live here any second, talking about Van Damme and his splits. Let's see here. I can find it. And with that, we're going to get out of here. Run those credits as I do. And